Why does this card exist?
I don't know. I really don't know.
The most frustrating thing about this card is there are so many points where they could have nerfed it.
Yeah, right.
The land could have come in tapped.
Play tapped.
It could have been non-token creatures.
It could have been only spells. It could have been only abilities. Even only abilities.
It could have triggered once.
Yeah.
Why does it trigger twice?
It could have been only on other players' turns.
Why does it have 4 toughness?
Only on your turn. It could have cost 5 mana instead of 3.
Why does it fly?
It's ridiculous.
It's very aggravating. That being said,
if you want to build it, let us know in the comments. This episode ain't over yet.
This episode is brought to you by BOMBAS. Ready for a spring refresh? BOMBAS has absurdly soft new socks, tees, and underwear to help you get your sock drawer stocked for the season. All with a 100% happiness guarantee. Plus, BOMBAS has a one purchased, one donated mission, so every time you buy a comfortable new pair of socks from BOMBAS, you're also donating essential clothing to someone facing homelessness. To date, they've donated over 100 million items and counting. So head over to bombas.com/commandzone and use code COMMANDZONE for 20% off your first purchase.
Greetings, humans. You have entered the Command Zone, your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander. Enjoy your stay.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Command Zone podcast. I'm your host. Another episode. 611 today.
Wow.
I know. We're so grown up.
That's a lot of numbers.
Yeah, just deep
I can't even count that high.
You can if you say one every episode.
Whoa, that's amazing.
Yeah, you've been
Sorry,
slowly
I totally
counting.
interrupted you. What's your name?
I'm Rachel Weeks.
Wow, I'm Jimmy Wong, the second best part of the show.
The first part being Magic the Gathering.
Aww. I was going to say Josh.
Yeah.
Just kidding. He's not here for this one. Modern Horizons 3. Can you believe it? We're here.
I can't believe we're already on the third one.
Yeah, let's see if it breaks more formats.
It will.
It will.
These Modern Horizon sets are known for being game-breaking, being powerful, being format warping for everything from Modern all the way down to Commander. They've brought us staples such as Urza and Solitude. And Hogak. All of these sort of format-changing cards. And today we are going to be talking about the most powerful commanders in the third iteration, Modern Horizons 3. We will showcase the best of the best, but not all of the legendary creatures in the set.
There's a good chance you'll see a lot of these around tables after the set's released. This is always a popular set for commanders, so we're excited to get into it. But before we do so, we should talk about our sponsors, right? We always do that because you always go and click the link at www.cardkingdom.com/command. That is our first sponsor for the show. They provide you the cards, the magic cards you need to do magical things at your battlefield and table. So if you're looking to pick up new commanders from MH3, some of their collector boosters or the booster boxes, you want to draft it, anything you want to do with the cards in Magic for this set and beyond, cardkingdom.com/command has your back. They have a huge warehouse. They also ship all of your cards out in one convenient package, so you get everything to your doorstep in one, like I said, convenient package. And then you can sleeve it up and play from there. We love Card Kingdom, and of course, supporting Card Kingdom means you're also supporting our show, all of the content we make, so that we can keep doing these extremely, I think it's going to be like a 2.5 hour episode, maybe 2 hours for you. So cardkingdom.com/command. Keep the good times rolling to the 1,000th episode and beyond.
Absolutely. And once those cards are in your hand, you're going to need to protect them. Go to ultrapro.com/command to pick up all of the sleeves and deck boxes, playmats, binders, dice, everything that you need to be a Magic player that basically isn't the cards. UltraPro has the highest quality accessories in the business. They help you organize your cards and display them, keep them safe when you're shuffling, travel with them. And they have all of the officially licensed art. For a big set like Modern Horizons 3, that is big news because there's tons of new sweet art and a lot of it is on legendary creatures. So if you're building a deck, go to UltraPro, check out their website, see if they have the playmat that matches your deck, get the box that matches your deck, the sleeves, you can have the whole package look like a super intimidating when you show up to your next game night, especially if you're building any of the face commanders from the precons, which of course you're picking up from Card Kingdom.
Yeah, and of course when you've done all that, there's one more way you can support the show. It's directly at patreon.com/commandzone, the full name there, well, almost the full name. You can check out our Patreon. We have tons of perks, like a Discord where Rachel, myself, Josh can interact with you on a daily basis, as well as join our awesome community there. You can ask questions, get help with your deck builds, whatever it is. Ask Josh what he eats for breakfast, even. I don't actually know that. I should ask him on the Discord. Well, you can get access to that. Iced coffee.
I don't know if he eats breakfast. He always has coffee, though.
Yeah, I stopped eating breakfast a long time ago, and it apparently is a normal thing. Like teenage boys are just like, breakfast? Nah, hit me up at lunch. But patreon.com/commandzone is where you can get access to all of those perks, as well as Josh's iced coffee recipe, which I'm pretty sure comes from a store that makes it for him. But you can only find that out on our Discord, as well as all the other perks. Patreon.com/commandzone. That is the direct way to support the show. So without the sponsors, without Patreon, we literally wouldn't be here. You guys keep the lights on. You guys help us out, make sure that we can do cool stuff, and also invite our patrons. We've had so many amazing guests from our patrons on the show, upcoming extra turns, as well as game nights. So patreon.com/commandzone is the place to do it. And we shout out one lucky patron every single episode. So this episode is dedicated to Connor Tilton.
Connor, you rock.
Tilt on, tilt off.
Tilted.
Tilted? Nah, not Connor.
Never Connor.
Never Connor.
Today we are going to talk about the most powerful commanders in Modern Horizons 3. Again, we're not going to be covering all of them. There's a ton of legendary creatures, but we're going to make sure that we try and talk about all of the ones that you're most interested in building and your playgroup.
Yes.
So you're prepared to either build the deck you want to build or be ready to play against any of these very powerful commanders coming out of this set.
Yeah, there is quite a lot. We have a lot of pages of podcasts in front of us, so let's get right into it, shall we?
Absolutely. We're going to read this first one, and she is a spicy one. It's Arna, Kennerüd, Skycaptain.
Oh, yeah.
2 white, blue, black, so 5 mana, Esper, for a 4/4 flying lifelink with ward, discard a card. Whenever a modified creature you control attacks, double the number of each kind of counter on it. Then, for each non-token permanent attached to it, equipment, auras, create a token that is a copy of that permanent attached to that creature. What?
Wow, my goodness. All right, Esper, not known necessarily for modified creature shenanigans.
Yeah, that's been in Gruul historically. So Esper modified is a big deal. Counters, I think, are a little bit easier to do. So what we're going to focus on is building this around equipment, which I think is going to be the most common build of Arna. But you could build it with different kinds of counters or perhaps even auras.
Yeah, so whenever a modified creature you control attacks, you're going to double the counters, but more importantly, you're making copies of the non-tokens attached to it. So it doesn't go infinite by copying the non-tokens or the tokens that you make, because they're going to come in as tokens. But any equipment that's on it, any auras, you get another version of it on that card. I'm sure everyone's head's already spinning. There is a lot of very interesting stuff that you can do here.
So, I mean, if we start with just sort of the most obvious, most powerful equipment, it's going to be the Swords of Feast and Famine, those sort of Forge and Frontiers. All
double swords means double triggers on combat, and this is all happening before damage, mind you. So very powerful stuff just by itself there. And it also doesn't have to be the commander, which is very important. The commander can come out, and then immediately a modified creature that you have on the board can attack, double the counters, double the equipment, double the auras, double the fun, double the gum. So first of all, let's talk about some equipment, some new ones that are all about ETB effects, because again, you're getting a copy of the equipment that comes in. This first one, Assimilation Aegis. I'm glad I don't have to play against this card too much.
Oh my gosh.
It's brand new, that's why. It's from Outlaws. 1 white, blue, when it enters the battlefield, you exile a creature until it leaves the battlefield. So it's basically like an Oblivion Ring type effect. But when Assimilation Aegis becomes attached to a creature, for as long as it remains attached to it, that creature becomes a copy of a creature card exiled with Assimilation Aegis. Yeah, so equip costs 2, but that doesn't really matter. It's going to come in, and then another one's going to come in when you attack with the modified creature, exile another thing, instantly attach, and then you get the second effect, you get a copy of that card that you exiled with Assimilation Aegis.
So you only get to copy one thing, but every time you attack, you Oblivion Ring a blocker, another creature. That is a powerful engine.
Yeah.
Up next is Pre-War Formal Wear. This is one from Fallout. So when it enters the battlefield, return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield and attach Pre-War Formal Wear to it. Equip creature gets +2/+2 and has vigilance.
Yeah.
It has equip 3. So some of the most important value creatures in equipment-based strategy are 3 mana and under. We're going to talk about some of them before, and they really, really help a deck like this play efficiently and play quickly. So Pre-War Formal Wear isn't one you're going to slam early, but is going to be a really important recursion piece in the late game when it's very, very easy to get blown out in a modified deck. If there's a board wipe, you lose all your creatures, all your equipment have nothing to do. Pre-War Formal Wear, we got it, gives you some of that recursion.
Yeah, recursion is very good. Again, doubling it up You can equip it on anything. Speaking of things to equip onto, I would think that in this deck, you're wanting to get out 1/1s that have unblockable or 1/1 flyers early in the game, and then when you play your commander, you're doubling everything up on it. What about creatures that give you those attackers, or equipment that give you those attackers? We've got Barbed Spike. This is 1 in the white in equipment. When it enters the battlefield, you make a 1/1 Thopter, and then you attach it to it. So yeah, pretty good to just slap a bunch of equipment on this 1/1. You don't care if it gets blocked, you're just getting more double things. And by the way, when the equipped creature dies, the equipment stick around. So you can still swap those around as well.
This isn't a super powerful equipment itself, but the fact that you can keep making bodies gives you the defense that an aggressive strategy like this one does kind of need.
Or attackers that can
too
vitally get through when we get to the equipment combat damage equipment.
You can do a similar thing with powerful living weapon cards like Batterskull.
Oh, yeah.
Those 0/0s aren't going to be great if they're unequipped, of course, but making multiple copies of Batterskull is incredibly powerful and just gives you more and more bodies to attack with.
Yeah, an interesting one is Cryptic Coat. This one, when it enters the battlefield, you manifest the top card of your library, or you cloak the top card of your library, and then the coat gets attached to it, but it doesn't have an equip cost. So when this enters the battlefield from the copy, it's going to make another cloaked card from the top of your library. So you're actually getting bodies that way. And the equipped creature gets +1/+, so can't be blocked. If you really want to, you can pay 1 in the blue to return the original coat to your owner's hand, so then you can play it again, get another body off it. But it comes in as an equipment that is automatically attached. Same with Barbed Spike, which is important too because you want to save mana in these types of decks. Otherwise, you're going to run out of it quickly if you don't have all of the equip cost 0 effects.
Right. It's important to note that when you make the token copy, your commander says it's attached to the creature.
The original one, yeah.
The original creature that attacked. But when you make a copy of like a Barbed Spike, for example, it's going to say you make a Thopter and attach it. So the Arna Kennerüd will make a copy, and then the copy will make a Thopter and move to the Thopter.
Right, so it's not going to stay on the creature, yeah. Same with Cryptic Coat. The Cryptic Coat's always going to move to the new cloaked creature.
Right. Powerful swords we've already mentioned. Obviously, the more powerful the equipment is, the more powerful it is to have multiples of them. One I wanted to mention was Thran Power Suit. This is a nice, cheap one. It says equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each aura and equipment attached to it, and it has Ward 2.
Whoa.
This is a 2-mana equipment with Equip 2. This is protection and a huge buff, and it scales with your commander.
Yeah.
So the more Thran Power Suits you have, the more exponentially bad it is for your opponents.
Yeah, and Ward 4, as we've seen with like Voha, is just basically hexproof in a lot of scenarios.
Oh, yeah.
No one wants to pay 5 mana for a Path to Exile.
That's the big thing you're focusing on this deck. But if you're building an equipment deck, you want all of the value creatures that we know and love and have talked about a lot. So we'll run through them pretty quickly.
Yeah, so Ardent Intrepid Archaeologist allows you to move aura and equipment at the beginning of combat on your turn. So if you're going the aura build, this will be in there. Pure Steel Paladin with Metalcraft allows all your equipment to have equip cost 0.
And whenever an equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card.
Ooh, yikes.
Which means you're drawing off of those copies entering.
Yeah. Frodo Determined Hero, it would be just kind of hilarious if you put pre-war formal wear on him to really mix the universes. When he enters the battlefield or attacks, you can attach an equipment you control with mana value 2 or 3 to Frodo. And as long as it's your turn, prevent all damage that will be dealt to Frodo.
I think this deck could have a problem of having a whole bunch of equipment on the board and not a lot of creatures. So I like the idea of having creatures in the deck that automatically scoop up as much as equipment as possible.
Yeah.
Like Rebek, like Frodo, even Pure Steel Paladin can equip it all to itself. But Heavenly Blade Master is also a big option for that as well. When this enters the battlefield, you may attach any number of aura and equipment you control to it automatically. Just whoop. And then other creatures you control get +1/+1 for each aura and equipment attached to Heavenly Blade Master. It is flying and it has double strike.
Yeah, that's pretty sick.
So it's a great way to rebuild after a board wipe. When you've lost all your creatures, you can just slam a Heavenly Blade Master and you're back in business.
Yeah, pretty good. We also have ways to use all these new artifacts that are in the battlefield. Again, we are caring about artifacts in this build, but you could go the counters route. You could go like, hey, I want to put a bunch of lifelink and death touch counters and indestructible counters on my creatures.
Yeah.
Sure, but we think equipment is the way to go. And auras as well. But for artifact, you got cards like Shimmer Dragon that allow you to tap 2 untapped artifacts, draw a card. So equipment being tapped is like free in this deck because you never use the equipment for anything else when it comes. You never need to tap it otherwise.
Yeah. Most equipment don't have tap abilities. I can't think of one that does.
No, I don't think so. And it would be kind of a little busted if they did.
A little bit.
Yeah. Urza, Lord Artificer, another Modern Horizons classic, allow you to tap your artifacts for blue mana. So again, ways to get additional mana. You're going to need additional mana in this deck for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting thing because this is Esper equipment, right? We haven't seen that. Usually it's Boros. So I was looking at ways to use the blue and black colors that aren't usually available in equipment builds. And of course, blue most offers artifacts. Black gives you like removal and other things. Doesn't have a ton to say about your equipment, but blue is great at giving you additional value for your artifacts. So Shimmer Dragon's great, Urza's great. For the new Forensic Gadgeteer says whenever you cast an artifact spell, investigate, and then activated abilities of artifacts you control cost 1 less to activate. Woo. This can't reduce the mana to 0 or less, of course. But that includes equip abilities.
Yeah.
It makes all of your equipment easier to equip.
Yeah, now your 2 equip abilities cost 1. We all know how good that is with Swiftfoot boots and Lava Spur boots and cards like that. And then you also have cards like Thought Monitor that have affinity for artifacts. So again, if you're in the artifact version of this deck, you're pumping those out. You're going to draw 2 cards in the center of the battlefield. It may just cost 1 blue mana. It's a 2/2 flyer, a great creature to, again, slap some of your equipment on.
The other thing that blue and black offers is defense. A lot of removal to protect yourself and, of course, counterspells to protect your board.
Yeah.
I think that's largely what you're going to lean on those colors for. Artifact support and making sure you don't die to your opponents when they're super afraid of your attackers.
Yeah, and again, this deck is artifact-based. I could see an Aura one being fun, but we just had Ariette, the Beguiler, come out, and that's also Esper Auras, but in kind of a different way.
Yeah.
So it looks like Esper's just getting all the toys.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a cool build, and you're looking for similar things that we're talking about. Auras with enter the battlefield abilities.
Yeah.
Synergistic aura pieces. Like
Things that you don't have to cast on other creatures to be good, necessarily, because that's what Ariette's all about. Okay, let's move on to the next one. It's a mono red commander. Hooray. It's Ashling is back, but now Ashling is a Flame Dancer. So it's 2 red for an elemental shaman 4/4. You don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases end. So this is kind of like a, what's his name?
Like an Omnath?
Omnath, yeah, but for red. And then it has Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, discard a card, then draw a card. If this is the second time this ability is resolved this turn, Ashling does 2 damage to each opponent and each creature they control. Whoa. If it's the third time, add 4 red mana. Red. Yeah, so you're going to get Magecraft triggers off of this. You can save red mana from turn to turn as long as Ashling is out. Casting or copying instant or sorcery spells the first time, great. Discard a card, draw a card, awesome. The second time, you may do like a semi, let's say 30%, 40% of the board wipe.
You could definitely kill 5 or 6 things with this easily.
Yeah. If
not
someone's
like
playing
a ton
tokens, yikes. Yeah, if you're even just a lot of value creatures, I always say is have toughness 2 or less because they're just powerful value creatures. Those just die. And then the last one is you just get more red mana to keep the Magecraft going. Just casting more red mana or passing the turn and holding that red mana in your mana pool because Ashling lets you keep it around.
This is a huge amount of value on a mono red spells commander. I think this one is quite obviously a Storm commander. It reminds me a little bit of Captain Ripley Vance, which is like if you chain together a bunch of spells, you get 1 big amount of damage. But Ashling is significantly more value for casting those instants and sorceries.
Yeah.
And it cares about when you copy things as well.
Yes.
So, first thing that we got to talk about is what spells go in this deck. And the answer is very similar to all of the other mono red Storm decks.
Yeah.
Cheap ones that draw you cards, and it doesn't matter what else they do.
Yeah, cantrips are very good, especially when the first ability here is looting, or not looting, it's rummaging on Ashland. So that you get to discard cards, draw cards, and potentially cantrip your way, so you're actually doing well on the card advantage side.
Yeah, so cards like Crash Through, which say creatures you control gain trample, draw a card, but it's a single mana for a sorcery.
Yep.
Just means that you're paying a red, you're drawing a card, then you're discarding a card and drawing another. Then you're immediately on to the second step in Ashling, which is the board wipe that I honestly think is the most powerful ability here.
Yeah, you want to get to that second one really quickly. So having your first spell be one that replaces the card, gets you that rummage, and also allows you to have mana for the second one is really where you want to be at.
Yeah, this is going to be like Renegade Tactics, Expedite, all of these 1 mana, draw you a card, do something.
Yep.
You could even include the cards that go along with that, like Zada, which copies it for each creature you control and would also trigger Ashling a whole bunch of times.
Yeah. So again, you want to do big time spells and get a lot of mana is just the big thing here. You do get mana by that third one as well. And notably, if Ashling stays alive, you keep the mana. So Mana Geysers, Jessica's Wills, are actually really good in this deck because even if you don't get the full value off of being, because sometimes I'll cast the Mana Geyser and be like, yeah, this is turn 3, but I don't have that much to do, or I can only do 1 or 2 big things. I lose the 5 unspent mana. So it's actually great to have these big mana spells in there and for all your future Storm turns.
As long as you can keep Ashling on the board, you can bank a lot of mana for 1 big turn.
Yeah, and especially if you have a lot of instants and stuff, then when you pass the turn, Ashling's ability resets, you get to sort of go again.
The next category of spells I think you're definitely including are probably copy spells, like Reverberate, Fury Storm. She triggers off of your copies as well. So you could cast a spell, cast a Reverberate, and copy it, and that's all 3 of Ashling's triggered abilities.
Wow.
And you've only spent 2 spells that time.
That's pretty nice.
So copy spells, especially the cheap ones, do feel very good in this deck.
Yeah, Magecraft is a term that was coined during Strixhaven, but it means cast or copy spells. And so you probably heard a lot of these names before when it comes to effects that happen when you cast or copy spells.
Not all of these are Magecraft. Some of them are.
Similar-esque, yeah.
Gutter Snipe says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. So that's likely how this deck is going to win the game. Like many mono red Storm decks, is you're trying to burn out your opponents using effects like Gutter Snipe. Kessig Flame Breather deals 1 damage. Fiery Inscription is from Lord of the Rings. That one deals 2 to each opponent, and it's on an enchantment.
One of the best creatures in the deck is probably the new Urabrath, the flip one, because it says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, it deals 1 damage to target opponent, and you add a red mana.
Pretty sweet.
So you're just getting your mana back, and we'll talk about that later with like Storm Kilnaris and Bergi and all that, but that's amazing.
Another way that I thought to burn out your opponents is to add something like Repercussion.
Oh, yeah.
Repercussion says whenever a creature is dealt damage, Repercussion deals that much damage to that creature's controller. You're a mono-red Storm deck. You're not going to have a ton of creatures in your deck, and I believe Ashling only deals damage, to your opponents and creatures they control.
Which is amazing, because I think the original Ashling blows up your board as well.
It does.
Yeah.
So Repercussion means anytime you get to that second level on Ashling, that means you're dealing 2 damage to each of their creatures and to their face for each creature they control.
Yeah.
It's a huge amount of damage out of nowhere, especially if they have a lot of creatures and aren't ready for this Repercussion.
Yeah, this could be anywhere from 10 to 20 damage, depending on what the board state looks like. Each player, it's different. Sometimes they might clear their board and do the damage, so it can be really disruptive when this happens. Some decks just fold to Ashling's second ability. And so a Repercussion on top of that means they're not only is their entire board getting cleared, but they're also getting hit for like 20 damage.
You do have to keep that in mind, that because you're going to be repeatedly wiping your opponent's boards, if you're playing against a token deck, they're going to come for you. They have to. They're going to come for your commander. So protection's a big part of this, and knowing who is going to be most worried about you definitely is going to impact your game plan.
Yep. Stormkiln Artist has Magecraft to make a treasure token whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery. So that's obviously one of the best cards in the deck. Birgi, God of Storytelling, allows you to do a similar thing to Urabrask. And it also says until end of turn, you don't lose the mana that Birgi gives you as steps and phases end, which is good as well. And then, of course, the opposite side of Birgi is very good. You discard a card and you exile the top 2 cards to your library. You can play them this turn.
I wanted to find some stuff that takes advantage of the looting ability as well. The rummaging ability. So there's more opportunity for burn and also card advantage when you focus on that. Starting with Glinthorn Buccaneer, deals 1 damage to each opponent when you discard a card. It's another way to burn, and it gives you another way to rummage.
Yeah, Containment Construct, I love this card. It turns Rummaging into card advantage. Whenever you discard a card, you can exile it from your graveyard. If you do, you may play that card this turn. So that means if you're exiling like a land or something, you can just play that card instantly. You don't have to. It's also a May ability, right? So you don't actually have to trigger Containment Construct on every card you discard as well.
Yeah, this is a great way to turn Rummaging into upside. Like Inti.
Inti.
It says, whenever you discard 1 or more cards, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card until your next end step.
Inti is nuts.
Inti is so busted.
I see this card popping up in every single format, and it just has... Because it also says whenever you attack, you can discard a card. You get 1/1 counter on the creature, and the game's trampled until end of turn. So you're going to get those discards. It doesn't have to have Inti attacking either, and the value anytime you discard a card.
On 2-mana creature, that is so valuable in this deck.
Yeah, so good.
One of my favorite cards, especially when I'm discarding a lot, is Currency Converter.
Yeah,
this is a single mana for an artifact. It says whenever you discard a card, you may exile that card from your graveyard. Then it has an activated ability that's 2, tap, draw a card, then discard a card. And it also says tap, put a card with Currency Converter into your graveyard. If it's a land card, create a treasure. If it's a non-land card, create a 2/2 rogue. So this just stores your cards in it for a little bit of value later. You can turn that lands into mana. You can turn those non-creature spells into bodies. It's going to be a great defensive piece, and you can get a little extra mana out of it later.
And it's a May ability, so you don't have to do it if there is a reason you want that card in your graveyard.
Okay, we need to turn up the heat a little bit because it's going to take a lot of turns to do 2 damage, doing 2 damage.
To kill everyone, yeah.
To kill everyone.
Sure.
So I wanted to add some stuff that sort of enhance what your commander is doing. And I think the scariest enhancements are Basilisk Collar and Gorgon's Head.
Death Touch, yeah. So this becomes a board wipe.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Pingers are very dangerous because you can give them Death Touch with equipment like Basilisk Collar and Gorgon's Head. Basilisk Collar also gives Ashling lifelink, which means she's going to be gaining a ton of life, and it doesn't matter how much damage they send your way. You're going to be gaining a lot more.
Yep.
That is not going to make you any friends at the table, so be careful when you deploy
this commander
those.
is not going to make you any friends at the table.
I agree. I mean, Mono Red Storm is a terrifying thing to play against.
In Mono Red anything, generally, if you let them have their commander for more than 1 or 2 turns, it can very quickly become over for you. It's the same with Krenko decks. It's the same with Neheb decks. Yeah. And even Torbrand, which is great in this deck, and Solfim, Mayhem Dominus, all great in this deck, all add plus damage to what you're doing. When you're sitting there and you're doing 4 damage to each creature, that is a board wipe.
Right.
You're going to kill so much stuff. And
it's one-sided.
It's one-sided, yeah. That's what's really nasty about it.
You do have to be careful, though, when you're building a deck like this. These enhancement pieces that we've talked about, there's a lot of artifacts and creatures, are all taking away from your density of instant and sorceries.
Yeah.
So anything you include in the deck that isn't an instant or sorcery needs to be very carefully considered because it does harm the overall cohesiveness of your deck.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Mono
that's
Red, make some friends.
Ashling.
Don't make some friends.
Up next, we're talking about the backup commander to the 5-color Eldrazi deck. This one is
fun.
Azlask, the Swelling Scourge.
Yeah.
Yuck. This is a 3-mana Eldrazi that says whenever Azlask or another colorless creature you control dies, you get an experience counter. And then it has an activated ability that's Wooburg, white, blue, black, red, green. Creatures you control get +X until end of turn, where X is the number of experience counters you have. Then Scions and Spawns you control gain Indestructible and Annihilator 1 until end of turn.
Wow.
Okay, so this is a Spawn and a Scion commander for sure.
Yes, so Eldrazi Spawn, Eldrazi Scion are both tokens that Eldrazi cards can make. Typically, they both sacrifice to give you a colorless mana, and Spawns are 0/1s and Scions are 1/1s.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about this activated ability because it does stack. It doesn't tap Azlask to activate it. So if you can pay Wooburg multiple times, you can buff all of your creatures multiple times.
Ooh-wee.
You can give all your Spawns and Scions Annihilator 1 twice.
Yeah, which is basically Annihilator 2. There's just 2 stacks of Annihilator.
Right.
Yeah.
And Indestructible twice. That doesn't really do anything, but go nuts.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about making sure that you have lands that just make Wooburg, because when you're building Eldrazi, especially at 5-color, it looks like a 5-color deck, but it's actually a 6-color deck.
Yeah, you have to have colorless mana sources.
Colorless mana. So you're going to want Crystal Quarry, you're going to want Cascading Cataracts, ways to filter your mana to make Wooburg to put into this activated ability.
And both those lands notably do tap for colorless mana.
Huge in this deck.
Super huge, yeah. Oh, yeah. You also have cards like Timeless Lotus, which is just a mana rock that taps to add Wooburg. So you're going to want to be able to do that easily. Otherwise, it's also going to make your mana base easier.
Right.
Notably. I think 5-color decks usually scare a lot of people because they're like, wow, I have to pay a lot to get a good mana base. So having just these 3 sources of Wooburg in there will help a lot, and you don't need to worry so much. Maybe you just want to build, I've seen this a lot of times, it's a Wooburg commander, but you're only putting all of your efforts into 2 colors.
Right.
Makes it a lot easier to figure out, and then you have other ways like your City of Brasses or Mana Confluences to add the extra colors should you want to activate Azlask's ability.
Yeah, we'll talk about this in the Eldrazi Precon upgrade, but I think you're still going to focus your deck on colorless.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you have all your colorless sources, and you really don't want to add too many things that have double pips of one color. Once you have one of each color on the board, you want to feel pretty safe that you're going to be able to cast your spells.
Yep.
That being said, there are some very powerful cards that are double pipped that might be worth bending your mana a little bit around it.
Yeah, because in this deck, you want to create a lot of Spawns and Scions. These are going to be your big win con when they start swinging in. Even if you can only activate it once, if you have 10 creatures with an Annihilator, 1 attacking. That's Annihilator 10, essentially. That could take someone completely out of the game. So you're going to want cards that create tokens. So one of the double pip cards we mentioned today is Pawn of Ulamog, an oldie but a classic. It's 1 black. Whenever it or another non-token creature you control dies, you can create a 0/1 spawn. Hooray!
This is definitely a sack outlet deck. You're going to want to be able to sacrifice your Eldrazi's for value, either the spawns or your non-token ones.
Yeah.
So I do think you're going to have plenty of sack outlets to fuel Pawn of Ulamog or this next card, Sifter of Skulls. This is 3 in a black, and it says whenever another non-token you control dies, this time you make a Scion.
Yay, it's like the L upgrade upon the Ulamog, basically.
Yeah, it's a little bit more expensive, but it does basically the same thing. You're probably going to want to run both.
Yeah, a card that I've been playing forever is Awakening Zone. It just allows you at the beginning of your upkeep, you can create a 0/1 colorless spawn that taps to, or sacrifices to add a colorless mana. So it's a bit slower, but it's going to give you your spawn over and over again, turn to turn, and it is a way to get pretty consistent ramp. Mm-hmm. And no one ever touches your Awakening Zone. No one cares.
No.
It ain't no,
Bitter Blossom, it is not.
Yeah, it's not Bitter Blossom. It's not Smothering Tithe or whatever. Yeah, people don't care.
I wanted to mention these. We don't usually talk about a bunch of new cards, but this set is full of Eldrazi's. The main set and the precon offer a ton to this commander, of course. So make sure that you're checking the new Modern Horizons 3 cards as well as all the old cards that are
and the new commander decks too, because those are separate.
One of the most powerful ones is Glaring Fleshraker, 2 and a colorless for a 2/2 Eldrazi drone. Whenever you cast a colorless spell, create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token. Whenever another colorless creature enters the battlefield under your control, Glaring Fleshraker deals 1 damage to each opponent.
Whoa! So this is very powerful just by itself.
Makes spawns and its impact tremors for all of your colorless creatures, which is going to be most of your deck.
Yeah. Notably, Azlask, your commander, is colorless. And a lot of cards that say Devoid on them, even if they have a colored mana pip like Sifter of Skulls, count as a colorless spell.
Yeah.
All right, next up we have Skittering Precursor, another new card. This is 2 in a red with Devoid, so it's a colorless spell. Menace, whenever you sack a non-token permanent, you create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature with... sack it, add a colorless mana.
It's basically another Sifter of Skulls, but now it's in red.
Yeah, and these are non-tokens, so that's why you do want to have your Pawn of Ulamog and your Sifter of Skulls dies. Sifter of Skulls, because they'll count towards whatever it is if you're doing the aristocrat style version of this deck.
I don't think we're going to spend too much time on a lot of the new cards. They're very powerful. If they make spawns, they're probably great.
Yep.
Eldrazi Confluence is a great one that comes in the precon, as does Spawnbed Protector. That's going to be a very powerful engine as well. One that's in the main set that you should definitely look up is Kozilek's Command.
Oh, yeah.
X colorless for a Kindred instant Eldrazi. Choose 2. Target player creates X 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawns. Great. Or target player scries X and then draws a card. Or exile target creature with mana value X or less. Or exile up to X target cards from graveyards. Super flexible. Most of the time you're going to be making spawns and doing something else.
Yep.
Killing something, exiling your graveyard, yada, yada, yada. But it's going to be very powerful in the deck and is definitely worth picking up from the main set.
Yeah, there's also I think it's Skittering Invasion. It's a 7 mana, makes 7 spawns. There's just a lot of different ways to make... Yeah, 5 spawns. There's a lot of different ways to make spawns. And in decks like this, you're going to also have tons of mana creation. So you're going to have a lot of fun there. A new card, 2 Spawnbed Protector. At the beginning of your end step, return an Eldrazi from your graveyard to your hand, and then you create 2 1/1 Eldrazi Scions.
Tons. Great engine.
Hooray. All right.
I want to talk about Brood Monitor and Eyeless Watcher. These are old cards that when they enter the battlefield, they make spawns.
Yeah.
These are going to be great in your deck because you're going to want to... They're easy to sack. You can sacrifice Brood Monitor, reanimate it, bring it back, make more Scions.
Yeah.
So this is great non-token fuel for all the stuff we mentioned before. For your Pawn of Ulamogs, your Sifter of Skulls. They're easy to sacrifice once they hit the battlefield and have even more value if you bring them back to the battlefield.
Yeah, and not to mention sacking it fuels your commander. Don't forget, wants colorless creatures to die, which include, by the way, the spawns you're making.
Oh, yeah.
So
which sacrifice themselves.
You don't want to just have the spawns sit around. You want to use them to ramp out to these big threats, get to 4 or 5 experience counters, and then all of a sudden your spawns become these massive lethal threats. Mm-hmm. But you don't want to do it the other way around.
I wanted to mention, it doesn't specify that Eldrazi colorless creatures have to die.
Yes, just a colorless creature.
So you could absolutely include other cards that make colorless tokens. So Kenzen Crucible of Defiance makes colorless. It's a land with channel, and it makes 2 colorless 1/1 spirit tokens. It's great. It's a land that does this for you, and if you're flooded and don't need it, then you pitch it and make 2 bodies.
Ugin the Ineffable. Not only does it make your colorless spells cost 2 less to cast, but it exiles the top card of your library face down, and you create a 2/2 colorless spirit creature token. So more colorless colorless creatures. Ugin is just insane in any decks with colorless because it's basically like a Soul Ring tapping for every single one of your creatures.
Oh, yeah. Skrulv's Hive and Loyal Apprentice are each going to make you one colorless body per turn, like Bitter Blossom style. You're not going to really be able to use them for all of the Eldrazi synergy, so you do want to have additional utility for them, including stuff like Phyrexian Altar, which sacrifices them for colored mana, Cryptolith Rite, which lets them tap for colored mana. It's some nice little fixing there. Even Plum the Forbidden, which says you can sacrifice as many as you'd like, and you draw that many cards and lose that many life.
Yeah, so sack all those creatures, get a bunch of experience counters, draw a bunch of cards, lose a little bit of life. Plum the Forbidden is pretty nuts in this deck. I really like Spawning Pit as well. It's a 2-mana artifact, an oldie but a goodie. You sack a creature, put a charge counter on, then you can pay 1 to remove 2 charge counters from it, and you put a 2/2 spawn artifact creature token into play. So that, again, is going to affect your colorless creature count there.
Going to be a really great engine for just churning out more and more bodies to get more and more experience counters. That way, any of your spawns is a truly lethal threat.
Yeah, and by the way, your opponents can't touch your experience counters, so all the commanders from days old that care about experience counters get pretty good.
Marin is insane in this deck. So Marin says whenever another creature you control dies, you get an experience counter. Great.
So just
doesn't even
doubling
specify
up,
non-token.
Doubling up what your commander's already doing, yeah.
At the beginning of your end step, choose target creature in your graveyard. If that card's mana value is less than or equal to the number of experience counters you control, return it to the battlefield.
Whoa.
Otherwise, put it into your hand. This is going to be really, really good with those ETB creatures I mentioned before.
Yeah.
And they come in, they make spawns, you sacrifice them for value, Marin brings them back to the battlefield, and she generates additional experience counters.
It shouldn't be hard. In a lot of these decks, it's hard to get up to like 4 or 5 experience counters. It shouldn't be hard to get to like 8 to 10 in this type of deck.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Ulthari's Sun's Glory is going to attack and make a 2/2 red rebel creature token, tapped and attacking for each experience counter you have. So good.
Yeah, it doesn't make colorless tokens, but if you slam this and it makes 8 2/2s attacking, your opponents are going to have to deal with this bird, and then you still have Eldrazi's.
Yep.
I think it's absolutely worth including. Even Minthara, Merciless Soul, does a lot of synergizing with your deck. She has Ward X, where X is the number of experience counters you have. Sure. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, you get an experience counter. Great. And then creatures you control get +1/+0 for each experience counter you have.
That's
it's
so good.
Another anthem.
Yeah, if you're getting, again, +8/+0 on your 0/1s and 1/1s, you don't even need to activate your commander's second ability. They are all going to be such incredibly powerful lethal threats on their own.
Even throwing in Mizzix of the Ismagnus and Izuri Claw of Progress, which don't have a ton of synergy but also benefit from experience counters, they're just going to be supercharged if you've been making all of these experience counters earlier in the game.
Yeah. So I think realistically, you're probably not activating your commander more than once. You're not going to stack Annihilator on your cards a bunch of times. So you could, though, if you have 12 mana or whatever.
Yeah.
Your goal here is to make a bunch of 1/1s in the early game, sack them to get experience counters. At one point, maybe activate for a big lethal threat. But if someone, again, is swinging at you with 5 1/1s that have Annihilator 1 on them, doesn't matter if the 1/1s get through for damage, you're going to get wrecked by having to sacrifice 5 permanents. So Annihilator, the bigger it gets, really becomes devastating.
It is worth noting that Annihilator is quite what it used to be because so many decks have just stuff lying around. Wheel of Treasures and Clues and Blood, and like so many strategies revolve around having things.
Yeah.
But it's still pretty scary, and you're going to prevent them from sacrificing those things to protect their other things.
Yeah, so Ashling and Azlask, both commanders that when you see them, you kill them.
Pretty dangerous.
Can't let them get going.
All right, we've got a number of more commanders to talk about, all of them more powerful than the next. This set is wild, and we'll get to those after a few minutes of our sponsors.
Ha!
When we moved into our new offices, it was a huge upgrade. Literally. This place is gigantic!
Which is great, but then you realize every single room needs
Tables,
chairs,
computer stuff.
decor.
We wanted the place to look nice, and obviously we want it to be Magic themed, so we're looking for stuff that's classy and high end.
And one of the coolest things we found was this Jace Beleren statue from Gadler's Tavern.
Yeah, look at the incredible attention to detail. And it looks even better when it's all lit up. Plus it comes with interchangeable parts, so you can customize it with different poses. This is really the ultimate Magic collectible to be the centerpiece of your home, office, or gaming setup, especially if you're a blue mage like me.
Or for the true OG collectors, check out this Black Lotus relief sculpture. It's such an iconic part of Magic history, but also a fantastic art piece that'll get compliments from players and non-players alike. It even comes with a stunning metal card that makes great desk decor all on its own.
Or you can use it as a proxy in your Garth One-Eye deck.
We call that a 2-for-1.
You know we're obsessed with quality here at the Command Zone, and Gatherer's Tavern, they absolutely share those values. Each of these pieces is individually hand-sculpted and hand-painted. As you might imagine, that's an intricate process, and as a result, both of these items are very, very limited. They only created a handful, and once those are gone, that's it.
These were made for the serious collector, and it shows. I mean, look at them. They're so great, it kind of feels like they should have their own room. Do you think we need more space?
Oh, don't even talk to me about that.
He's still a little touchy about the move.
Go to GatherersTavern.com/CommandZone to get 5% off your purchase of these amazing premium collectibles.
If you want to show off your love of Magic, Gatherer's Tavern has the coolest and highest quality display pieces out there. So pick one up today and get 5% off any Magic the Gathering items on the site when you go to GatherersTavern.com/CommandZone.
Wowee! Look everyone, it's me, Loot from the Thunder Junction Vault! Feels like forever I was trapped in there, but now that the world's seen me, it wants more! Plushies, keychains, stickers, everybody wants their loot, and I want that sweet cash. But I don't know how to actually sell stuff, I'm just a little guy! So my key to everything was Shopify, the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business, with powerful tools like the internet's best converting checkout and award-winning support. So far, my brand's been on the way up, but I'm not pulling freaking Baby Yoda numbers yet. Luckily, Shopify works just as hard for the plucky upstart as they do for big brands like Allbirds and Brooklinen. They gave me everything I need to sell my loot to adoring fans all over the world. Now I'm free to focus on being adorable instead of learning e-commerce, because who wants to do that? Not a cutie pie like me. I want to roll around in money. Whee!
Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/TCZ, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/TCZ now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/TCZ.
Man, power creep is just getting out of control.
Tell me about it. Everything these days is just a strictly better version.
Exactly. Like the new Upgrade Them All of RAYCON's best-selling everyday earbuds.
These things are straight up push.
I mean, look at all the new features. Active noise cancellation, multi-point connectivity to pair with 2 devices at once, even a quick charge function.
That's so many keywords.
Right? I'm always taking my RAYCONs on the go, and now with quick charge, even the short drive to the gym gives them enough juice to blast tunes through my whole workout.
I use mine for Magic podcasts, and the upgraded weatherproofing lets me listen rain or shine. And I can do it in style too. All the new colors are great, but this purple is my favorite.
Plus, you're still getting RAYCON's amazing audio quality and comfortable optimized gel tips, all at half the price of other premium brands.
So they really are just strictly better now.
Wow, you know, maybe power creep is a good thing.
Oh, whoa. It's good this time, but let's not make it a rule.
Go to buyraycon.com/command today to get 20% off your RAYCON order plus free shipping. That's right, you'll get 20% off and free shipping at buyraycon.com/command. Again, buyraycon.com/command. Okie dokes, we are back to the show. MH3, Modern Horizons 3, Commander Set Review, what we consider some of the most powerful commanders. Not all of them, because we would be here for 7 hours.
Up next is the backup commander for the Jund deck.
Yay, it's Coram, the Undertaker. It's 1 in Jund, black, red, green, for a 0/5 human warrior. It gets +X/+O, where X is the greatest power among creature cards in all graveyards. And whenever Coram attacks, each player mills a card. And then during each of your turns, you may play a land and cast a spell from among cards in graveyards that were put there from libraries this turn. So we've seen this effect with like Master Transcendent recently in Fallout. Mm-hmm. It wants to mill players on their turn. By the way, when Coram attacks, this is going to happen. And then among those cards, so you have to do some accounting.
Well, this only triggers during your turns.
Oh yeah, sorry, during each of your turns. But you still have to do some accounting to make sure that whatever you're casting out of your library or from your graveyard is for this ability from the cards you milled this turn.
Yeah, I think the most important, Coram's a very flexible commander. You could really put anything in it as long as you are milling yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's where any Coram build starts. You're going to need a lot of this because you want to be reliably milling, 3 to 4 cards each turn easily?
Yeah,
you can play a land and cast a spell out of them.
Yeah, and attack.
And he himself mills
himself,
one each. And you can cast your opponent's spells as well. But I think the primary engine is going to be milling, and casting the best spells from among them. You're going to win by your overwhelming card selection.
Yeah. And not to mention, most of the self-mill cards like Grizzly Salvage or Mulch allow you to get a card back from the ones you milled. So you get that card back as well as you're able to play a land from it, cast something from it from Coram's ability. So you're really getting almost twice the value from a lot of these cards, which is pretty nuts. Sometimes
Yeah.
even 3 times the value because you get a land and a creature and a whatever.
A very important piece in this deck is Underrealm Lich. This is 3 black green. It says if you would draw a card instead, look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put 1 into your hand and the rest into your graveyard.
Really good.
So now you look at the top 3, you pick one that you want in your hand, you bin the other 2, play a land, cast that spell, and you've just drawn 3 cards with your Underrealm Lich.
Yeah.
Plus, you can pay for life and give it indestructible to block with it or protect it from a board wipe.
Yeah, I like this a lot. There's also a new card called Aftermath Analyst, which we've seen in a lot of different playgroups now.
So powerful.
It comes in at mills 3, and then you pay 3 in the green to sack it to return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So that's usually a later game thing, but if you're constantly self-milling in this deck, you could have 4, 5, 10, 12, 15 lands in your graveyard. By the time you activate this, you're just in business.
Yeah. I wanted to mention, if you're milling this much and you know that you can play whatever's on top of your library if you attack with him,
right,
then you can play really, really efficient recursion pieces like Noxious Revival or Mortuary Mire that take a card from your graveyard and put it on top of your library. Then when you go to attack with Coram, you know exactly what spell you're going to be casting off of that mill.
Yeah.
And you've spent no mana to regrowth that card from your graveyard. So stuff like Golgari Thug, when it dies, you put something on top of your library, or Witch's Cottage. All of these are incredibly efficient ways to basically tutor a creature from your graveyard to your hand because you can cast it with Coram.
Yeah, pretty good. Also, Dredge, Surveil, both mechanics you should take a look at if they fit within your game plan and you are just a bad person, you know, go ahead and play them. Okay, you are casting stuff out of your graveyard. There are some synergies there. Burning Vengeance, an oldie but a goodie. Whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, it deals 2 damage to any target. So you can just start picking stuff off left and right. Again, you could mill multiple things out of your graveyard and cast multiple spells per turn. So this could happen a lot.
I believe this works how I want it to. It's Gravebreaker Lamia. This is 4 and a black for a snake Lamia. It says whenever it enters the battlefield, search your library for a card, put it into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. And it also says spells you cast from your graveyard cost 1 less to cast.
Wow, that's really powerful.
So it's a 5 mana snake that when it enters the battlefield, tutors a creature to your graveyard. It entombs it, basically. And then your commander can
any card,
cast
actually.
it.
You can
Any
do a
card?
land, yeah, any card for a card.
It
so
is
it's basically
literally entombed.
Yeah. You can, again, and this commander, Coram, lets you cast a spell or play a land. That is everything.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you may play a land and cast a spell.
Right. You get to do both.
Gravebreaker Lamia is essentially a demonic tutor for your deck.
Right. And it's on an ETB.
Yeah.
That is going to reduce the casting cost of the spell you tutored for.
Yeah. Notably, this deck plays with its hand basically up. And you can't Gravebreaker Lamia to save a card for later. Everything you're doing is that turn when you mill it, when that happens. So it is a bit more in your face, but you know, it's Jund. You have so much value that I don't think playing a little bit off tempo is going to affect your game plan overall. You're going to outvalue people just from this commander alone.
Another thing that's going to be really important, Coram's really a big piece of your deck, so haste is going to be huge because he can attack and it just makes him a little bit more valuable immediately. So anger is great in any self-mill deck. It's going to give, if it's in your graveyard and you have a mountain, all your stuff has haste.
Hooray.
Sweet. Then something like Chainer Nightmare Adept is actually bonkers.
Yeah, give those creatures haste if they didn't come from your hand.
Exactly. So if you're casting like a mana creature from your graveyard, you can cast a land anywhere else for free, and it immediately taps for mana.
That's cool.
And you could discard cards from your hand and cast something in your graveyard that turn.
Yep.
Chainer does a ton of work.
Yeah, Chainer is great in any Reanimator type decks as well.
I want to take a second before we go on to the next category, because I do think Coram is an extremely powerful, extremely flexible commander. I think you could just have this be a Jund self-mill value pile. Right. But he does have this other line of text on him that you could build around if you'd like. I do not think it's mandatory for any Coram build.
Coram gets +X/+O, where X is the greatest power among creature cards in all graveyards, but probably going to be your graveyard.
Probably. It's way easier to mill yourself than to mill the table, especially in Jund.
Yeah, totally. So huge creatures like Lord of Extinction is a good reminder here. Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards in all graveyards. So this thing is just huge. It's very similar to what Coram does, but it also buffs toughness.
It's worth noting that if a creature has a star in your graveyard, it has the power and toughness that it would have if it's on the battlefield. It's in any zone. So Coram will have that power and but not toughness, just power.
Yeah. You're going to be asking players a lot at the table. Hey, what's in everyone's graveyard? How many cards? Yeah, so this is something that you probably, if you're playing Coram, just have some dice to your side and you just keep track of it as it goes, because it will become annoying very quickly if you don't just know or can keep track of it as it begins to pile on.
Other big creatures, of course, Yargle and Multani. It's hard to get bigger than an 18-6. Regular old Multani Marrow Sorcerer,
the original,
OG, has power and toughness equal to the total number of cards in all players' hands.
Whoa.
Malignus is a wild one.
Yeah, power and toughness equal to half the highest life total rounded up. So that is a way to get higher than Yargle and Multani, because you get 20 at least when the game starts.
And so those are really high power stuff that you could just naturally give your commander. And you could try to get somebody out with commander damage that way.
Yep.
But you're more likely to do some kind of fling type finish. So something like an Essence Harvest that's 2 and a black. Target player loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control.
Yeah. Any of the regular fling effects as well will do the same thing. And especially if you are playing other big beaters, you'll be able to fling other stuff at people. There are ways to just one-shot people in this deck for sure.
Other power matter cards that are pretty typical in these kind of decks are Traverse the Outlands.
Oh, yeah.
Selvala, Heart of the Wilds is very powerful. Will add mana equal to the number, the power that you have of the creature she chooses.
Mandate of Abaddon is like a one-sided board wipe. If you have an 18 power thing out, everything with power under it gets wrecked.
Seems great. That is a way that you could certainly build Coram. I think that's a package that's optional if you are excited by that kind of strategy. Yeah. Otherwise, jund them out. Just grindy.
And you're going to be milling people constantly, so including yourself. So if you do run the self-mill plan, I could see you having a Yargle and Multani in the deck.
Just to have it.
A Lord of Extinction in the deck, because there are points when you may play it and it just becomes the best card on the table as well. Mm-hmm. And your commander's already been killed like 3 times because everyone saw how nuts it was.
That's Coram. I think that card's very sweet, and I'm curious to see how people build it.
Yeah, one thing I really like, an aside, about the Modern Horizons set is that it does a lot of helping out other less popular things in each of the colors. So I would say when it comes to Jund, Value Town is sort of what people think about, but this is specifically like graveyard size matters, and you get a little bit of recursion in there, and then they're going to put a lot of new cards in the deck where it's in the set where it's like, hey, this is great for specifically self-mill play from graveyard strategies, instead of just this is good in any deck ever,
right?
Which is what you don't want to see. We're going to talk about one commander later on that kind of crosses that boundary, but I think for the most part I do like Modern Horizons because like Changeling Outcast. Yeah. That card is just great.
It's awesome.
Doesn't break any formats, is great in so many different decks, and is just a piece that you can use to make your deck better. It's a common. It helps players that are new out to the game make their decks better without having to invest big bucks. So that, to me, is the highlight of Modern Horizons sets.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of cards like that in this Modern Horizons 3 as well.
Yeah.
Let's meet the next commander. This one, spoiler alert, is what Josh plays on game nights.
Ah, yeah. We are doing a Modern Horizons 3 game nights with the commanders from the set. We've already spoiled another one that a guest plays, but we won't tell you which one it is and which guest. But Josh does play this one.
That's a secret.
It's Genku, Future Shaper. 2 a white and a blue. It's not a control deck.
It's not.
Thankfully.
It's cool.
Yeah, I've had a long grievance with white-blue control decks. That's all they could do for a long time. It's a 2/5 Moonfolk Wizard. Whenever another non-token permanent you control leaves the battlefield, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. Create a creature token with those characteristics. So you can either create a 2/2 White Fox with Vigilance, a 1/2 Blue Moonfolk with Flying, a 1/1 Black Rat with Lifelink. And when you've chosen one, you can't do it again this turn. So you can't make a bunch of foxes on a single turn. You have to do one of each. Yeah. And then when you run out of choices that turn, you're done. However, you can also pay 3 a blue and a white to put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. So that's a bit overcosted, but it is cool that the commander is basically giving you all the pieces minus the non-tokens leaving the battlefield to make a board state, get a buff, and win that way.
I also read that the tokens that Genku makes are his children.
Oh,
isn't that sweet?
Yeah, I mean, who is gonna create a Genku Future Shaper that is just the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Yeah, that's true. Oh,
it's got similar.
It does make Skullclamp a little sadder.
Yeah, Skullclamp for the rat specifically because it's a 1/1. That poor rat is like, I'm here and I have lifelink. Rats with lifelink. I've never seen that. What is that thing you're putting on my head,
You also
Dad?
have 1 toughness.
Oh, yeah. A 2/2 and a 1/2 are just like, man, good thing we're not the youngest child in the order, I guess. Okay, so
Genku's sweet. This cares about any non-token leaving the battlefield.
Yeah.
Whether it goes to the graveyard or whether it gets exiled
Bounced.
or bounced. So there's a lot of different things you can do with Genku.
yeah.
I think the most powerful
are the fetch lands.
Yeah!
And they're getting reprinted in Modern Horizons 3, the allied ones, I believe. So Flooded Strand is a great way to start. Every time you crack that Flooded Strand or any fetch land or even Evolving Wilds, okay, we don't need to go in the fetch the full, the pricey ones, you're going to get one of those tokens, which is pretty good.
Genuinely, I think you run every single fetch that is legal in this deck.
Yeah.
For Genku, because it just gives you a free creature anytime you crack one.
Yeah. You can also have it so that you play them and you crack them on new turns each time, so that you get 2/2s each time if you want, or a bunch of flying ones or lifelink ones, whatever you want.
You could even run the lands that return themselves to hand, like
Yeah,
the
these are
Oboro Palace in the Clouds, or even Ghost Town.
Ghost Town, finally, a deck for Ghost Town.
I think it's a sweet Ghost Town deck because you're not necessarily bouncing Ghost Town right away, but if you need an emergency blocker or if you want to untap with one more creature, it's a great way to guarantee that you get one more token.
Yeah, and you get to tap it for mana before you pay the 0.
That too.
Later on in the game, when you're done playing, like you're not trying to get more lands on the table, it could just be play Ghost Town, tap it, pass the turn, bounce it, next turn play it again, right? So you can always just have a trigger each time. The bounce lands are great as well. Azorius Chancery is the only one you can play in this deck, unfortunately.
Guildless Commons.
Guildless Commons.
Colorless.
Yeah.
I think there's a desert that
there's
does
an arid something. Yeah, there's a new desert from OTJ.
But Azorius Chancery is probably the best one. I don't think you want to run a ton of bounce lands in this deck unless you have specifically ways to put additional lands into play.
Yep.
So those are all like the freest ways to sacrifice things, but you're in white and blue, so I think a really neat way to build this is sort of bobbly.
Bubbles.
Like cheap artifacts that sacrifice themselves for value and give you an additional token. So it's kind of blue-white artifacts.
Yeah. Ether Spellbomb's great. You can pay a blue, sack it, return target creature to its owner's hand, or you can pay one to sack it to draw a card. So there are turns where you can sack this to bounce your own thing to your hand and you get 2 triggers, or you just use it on someone else's stuff, or you just use it to sack to draw a card and then make a token on top of it. So it is very effective in just giving you a lot of options, right?
Yeah, like Wayfarer's Bauble obviously is great in Commander, but something like Voyager's Staff is a artifact that you can pay 2 and sacrifice it to blink something. Or it exiles until end of turn.
Yeah.
So you can save it from a board wipe and you get 2 tokens off of it.
Yeah, or you can also just blink an opponent's creature. You can
That
kill
too.
them. There's lots of, right. I love the fact that you can do it on your own stuff as well as other opponent's stuff as well. Seal of Cleansing is a removal spell that's non-enchantment that you sacrifice it to blow up a target artifact or enchantment, which is real good. Same with Seal of Removal. That's going to bounce a creature to its owner's hand. Very good.
These are great little rattlesnakes. That's a ton of just like tiny little bits of value. Getting like, as long as you're using the tokens to draw cards or you're using the like the fact that it's a permanent to recur things, there's nice little engines that you can assemble in this kind of deck. So I think you're definitely running a lot of white's recursion, like Brought Back is perfect in a deck that wants to take advantage of fetch lands.
Oh man, yeah, with the seals as well as the baubles as well. Super good there.
It says choose up to 2 target permanent cards in your graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn. Bring them back. Put them back on the battlefield.
And it's an instant, so you can wait until the end step of someone else's turn to do this and get all the tokens that you want. Savage Reclamation is obviously super good in this deck. There's a lot of different ways that white can do this, as well as flickering. So we'll talk about flickering next, but I love Savage Reclamation. Again, when you can bring back lands, it makes it really effective because those fetch lands that you're playing are going to be able to thin out your deck more. This is a deck that legitimately actually will get deck thinned by all the fetch lands that you're playing and replaying.
Honestly, I think this is probably a Crucible deck.
Oh, for sure
which
you play
seems
Crucible.
a little weird, but because like you have so many fetch lands in the deck and they're so powerful with your commander, it's probably like a Felidar Retreat and you have a little bit of a lands package in your Azorius deck.
Yeah, which is great. Azorius used to only be about controlling your opponents or just drawing a bunch of cards, and now we have tokens.
That being said, this could absolutely be a blue-white blinky control deck.
Yeah. Which is cool because if you blink your commander, you also reset the ability on it, and then you get to this depends on what kind of tokens you're making, right? So if you're just going to 1/1 rat, say you want a Skull Clamp, or you want to make all the 2/2s, this allows you to reset your commander, but also just allows you to just blink other things on your battlefield to get more value.
I looked at a lot of stuff that blink themselves or return themselves to hand because it just gives you a little engine in a box. Salt Skitter is a really funny card.
Fun.
That's 3 and a white for a 3/4 worm. Whenever another creature comes into play, remove Salt Skitter from the game. Return Salt Skitter to play under its owner's control at the end of turn. It's a little white Norin that kind of leaves the battlefield when a creature shows up and comes back. So you're going to get a trigger from your commander every single turn a creature comes into play.
Yeah, including your opponent's turns, which is the important one here. It seems like an unplayable card otherwise.
I like Sten in this deck, depending on how you build it.
Yeah, you choose a card type other than creature or land when it enters the battlefield. The spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So in this case, I could see enchantment and artifacts both being very powerful here. Wayfarer's Bauble now costs 0. Ether Spellbomb now costs 0. And then you can pay 1 white-blue to exile Sten and blink him. So you can choose, okay, you know what? Now I want to do enchantments for all my seals. Now I want to do artifacts.
Or if you just need to save Sten from a board wipe or make a token,
or just make a
block.
token. Yeah.
That gets a little bit of additional synergy on Sten.
Yeah, this deck should be using every single one of its mana every turn.
It feels like it. Yeah. This is very Trixie deck. It's trying to hold up activations. It's trying to hold up it's instants that bring all your stuff back.
Yeah.
It should always have something up its sleeve. And Displacer Kitten has so many sleeves.
Yeah, this is probably one of the best cards in the deck if you played it.
Yeah, I mean, if you have Displacer Kitten and you have all these baubles, you're going to be blinking your commander and you're going to be making more tokens, and you can really sort of assemble a bit of a stormy, tokeny package.
Totally.
Especially if you're doing baubles, like you can cast them from the graveyard with stuff like Emery.
Yeah, stuff with Flash is just great. So like White Mainline is a creature that when it enters the battlefield, you return the creature you control to its owner's hand.
Yeah.
So anything with ETBs on it, even like your Sten, even just to save someone from a board wipe and get another token, it doesn't really matter what you're doing with the White Mainline. You're gonna
probably
find.
Bouncing White Mainline.
Yeah, you could just play it for 2, bounce it, make a token each time.
I mean, that's a perfectly fine way to spend your mana if you're not spending it on counterspells or other tricks that you're holding out.
That's great. It's almost my turn. I have 4 mana left. I'm just going to play White Mainland twice, make 2 tokens.
Make 2 tokens.
Start my turn.
Pretty
Amazing.
cool.
Yeah.
Run Away Together is actually great in this deck. It is choose 2 target creatures controlled by different players. Return those creatures to their owner's hands.
Yeah.
You can save one of your creatures. You can bounce one of your opponents. You can bounce 2 of your opponent's things.
Yep.
A little bit of extra utility that gives you a token and takes care of an answer for a turn.
There's also This Town Ain't Big Enough, which does a similar thing.
Yeah.
It would cost 1 in the blue if you target one of your own things.
I think this could look very similar to a Brago deck.
Aha! We found it.
Yeah, all of this being said, these are a lot of cute abilities that work very well with Genku, but if you want to just build blue-white blink, you could just build this as sort of like a Brago-style blink deck.
Yeah, I like the idea of just playing this commander as it is written, where you're doing a lot of this cool stuff, you're making a big board up, you're drawing cards to Skull Clamp, but most importantly, you get to the point where you just pay the activation cost and you go nuts. Or you have a Felidar Retreat, you make a bunch of tokens. It's like a blue-white token, like Trixie token deck.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
I love the play patterns on Genku. I think it's a really neat deck that leaves you with a ton of options, and you get to be, you get to follow your heart. Do you want to be a little like Saki Enchantress deck? Do you want to be a blink deck? Do you want to be an artifact baubles deck?
Just don't be a control deck. Don't play stacks, please. This next one is a 9 mana commander, which is hilarious, but it actually is going to be much less than that because it is Herigast, Erupting Nullkite.
Sweet.
9 mana, 6/6 legendary creature, Eldrazi dragon.
Nice. They got the dragons. Oh no.
Finally, this is like Game of Thrones all over again. The big one is Emerge for 6 red. So that is an alternate casting cost, and you may cast this spell by sacking a creature and then paying the Emerge cost reduced by that creature's mana value. So if you have a 4 mana value card out, you sacrifice that creature, and then instead of 6 red, you pay 6 red minus 4, you pay 4 mana, so 2 red to cast this. And it says when you cast this spell, you may exile your hand. If you do, draw 3 cards. So you want to empty your hand out quickly for this. It has flying, and it also has the ability that each creature spell you cast has Emerge, and the Emerge cost is equal to its mana cost.
Okay.
So yeah, a lot of text here. Most important is the Emerge, I think, on other creatures that you control. So this deck wants to have stuff out, sacrifice it to make casting your other spells cheaper and cheaper, and then eventually what you're doing is you're replacing creatures. You're sacking a creature, get some ability, and you're playing a new one to replace that one.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely chaining together creature after creature after creature. It is worth noting that Emerge, you cannot reduce the colored mana, I believe. You may cast the spell by sacrifice and paying reduce that by that creature's mana value. Yes. So you can reduce only the colorless mana of the creature. So if a creature's like 3 in a green and you sacrifice a 4-drop, you still have to pay the green.
Yeah.
Probably not green in this deck, but that's why it's very powerful to fill this deck with colorless creatures, especially ones with no colored mana specifications, because then you can reduce its casting cost all the way to 0.
Yeah, so Solemn Simulacrum is just like perfect for this deck, right?
It's perfect. This deck wants as many Solemns as you can possibly get.
You can only play one.
Yeah.
This is Commander.
Well, there is a second one that only gets a land on ETB, and it is on the screen right now. But it is definitely worth putting in this deck because you want colorless creatures that have ETB abilities or dies abilities that can reduce the casting cost of your commander and all of the stuff that comes after that.
Yeah, and again, you only need to play your commander once for the ability to start going, so you don't have to like have everything in your deck built around it, but it does help because your other creatures that when it sees those creatures dies with the emerge cost will like that. So like Solemn is great. When it dies, you draw a card. So you emerge out either your commander, you draw a card with it, or you can emerge out any of these other big beaters that we're going to talk about here.
Yeah, Oxida Golem is really good in this deck because it has affinity for mountains, and it's 6 colorless mana. So if you have a couple of mountains on the battlefield, you can reduce the casting cost of the Golem, and then you reduce your commander's casting cost to only red.
Yeah, that's really good. There's a chance that you play Oxida for free and then get your commander out for red that same turn.
Yep.
Wow.
Seems great.
Yeah. Also, you could swing with Oxida because it has haste.
Yep.
Sojourner's Companion is a 7 mana affinity for artifacts, and it can also land cycle for artifact land cycles. So that's like just great overall. It can possibly cost like 2-3 mana, reduce your mana cost a ton by your commander. That's great.
This is definitely an artifact deck. I think you're going to want a lot of incidental artifacts in the deck because affinity for artifacts is so powerful with your commander's ability.
Yeah, imagine playing your Sojourner's Companion, then sacrificing it to get out this next one.
This is awesome in the deck. So this is Skitterbeam Battalion. It's a 9 mana construct with prototype, 3 red for a 2/2. But it has an ability that says when Skitterbeam Battalion enters the battlefield, if you cast it, create 2 tokens that are copies of it.
Whoa.
So if you cast this for its prototype cost at 3 red, you get 3 5-drops.
Oh, that's right.
So they're perfect for sacrificing to later emerge abilities. Or you cast it for a reduced casting cost, like using an emerge ability, and cast it for 9, and then you make token copies of your 9-drop, which makes emerging even more easy later. Because it makes copies of itself, the copies it makes have casting costs that can help in emerge.
Yep. They have all the copyable attributes of the original card.
Exactly.
Well, now that you have a 9-drop out, how about making your Emrakul the Promised End only cost potentially nothing? It's already going to be reduced by the type of cards in your graveyard. This could be a 0 mana Emrakul with a Skitterbeam out.
Sweet.
You could even use your commander because it has the ability to emerge out that, Kozilek, which is going to be costing 1 mana at that point.
Seems good.
Triplicate Titan will cost 0 mana if you do it with your commander or with a Skitterbeam Battalion. Yikes.
Triplicate Titan's also really great to sacrifice to emerge because they leave stuff behind when it dies.
Yeah.
I have a Rakdos deck that's doing a very similar thing, playing a lot of high drop colorless creatures, and Sandstone Oracle is a great card to do this for as well, because when it enters, you draw cards up to the highest number of cards in hand. So you pick an opponent that has more cards in hand and you draw up to that many cards. Yeah. So if you're in mono red, this is a huge burst of card advantage when you're dumping creatures onto the battlefield.
Not to mention your commander is going to make you dump your hand if you have any cards left in there. It's great. You have 3 cards left. Maybe one of them Sandstone Oracle, you play this, get back up to 7, and you're just right back in the action.
Oh, yeah. I love the colorless flash abilities in this deck as well, like Liberator Urza's Battlethopter or Skittering Cicada. That means that you can, if somebody tries to like kill your creature, you can emerge it for another creature in your hand in response. It just makes your deck a little bit more resilient, and it gives you, again, a cheap colorless body to emerge later.
Yeah, pretty good.
Up next, we're going to talk about ways to cheat other creatures into play so you can sacrifice them and get a little value from everything.
I like this.
The first one I might want to mention is going to get a little bit of groans, but it's excellent in this deck.
It is a ____ goblin.
It's name sticker goblin.
Name stickers. Not banned yet.
Not banned in Commander. Banned everywhere else. I was going to say, if you're a legacy player, then you probably know this card. But when it enters the battlefield, you may put a name sticker on it. Add red for each unique vowel on that sticker. The way that this card works is you pick sticker cards, but basically when it enters, you either make 4, 5, or 6 red mana. and based on like which sticker sheets you have available to
Which
you.
stickers are the best, do you know?
I do. There's a list of 10 that are optimized. You can go on Legacy, like name sticker Goblin decks,
It'll let you know.
and get the best ones for it.
Well, the nice thing is once you sticker it once, you don't have to re-sticker
That's the thing.
it, right?
It's just an ETB ability, but if you roll 5, if you get a 5 or a 6 on it, your commander is free.
Ooh.
So you pay 3 mana. If you add 5 red mana, you can sacrifice this to your commander's ability,
to
and then you
emerge.
have the 5 red mana to pay for the rest of the emerge cost.
There you go.
So it is worth it.
It's a way to cheat out your commander on turn 3 is what you're telling me.
That's incredible.
Yeah, a 9-mana commander on turn 3 is pretty incredible.
That rules. So it's worth mentioning, and it's worth picking up some sticker decks if you're going to build Herigast.
All right, next up we have Sneak Attack. So this card is just absurd in this deck because it allows you to cheat out a creature from your hand for red mana. We just have a ton of creatures we mentioned that are 7, 8, 9 drops. And then you have to sacrifice it in the turn, but if you sacrifice it to emerge out your commander or use that mana creature to emerge out another one, then you're getting double the value. It was going to die anyway.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. There's a lot of colorless creatures that help you cheat creatures into play anyway, like a Clone Shell or a Summoner's Egg. Both do it in a little bit different ways. When Clone Shell enters the battlefield, you look at the top 4 cards of your library, you pick one of them, and you exile it under Clone Shell.
Imprinted.
And then when Clone Shell dies, you return the exiled card face up. If it's a creature card, put it onto the battlefield under your control.
Yeah, that's good.
You've got a really great way of making it die. Sacrificing it to cast something else. Summoner's Egg does a very similar thing, except for it's a 4-drop, 0/4 egg.
Eggs. Bubble. And then, of course, threaten effects are really good in this deck because when you steal the creature and you have a merge on your commander, and then when your commander's out on other creatures, you can sack the creature you stole.
Yeah.
Yay!
I wouldn't fill this deck with threaten effects because that is a lot to ask for. But it's a pretty cheeky move to be able to like emerge out a Zealous Conscript, steal a thing, and cast something with their creature. It's brutal.
That is brutal. Seize the Spotlight is probably the best commander-centric threaten effect because you could get treasures or draw cards if you don't get any of the threaten effects. And people are probably going to give you cards and treasures.
Yeah, if you've got a sack outlet on board like your commander, they're probably just going to let you draw.
They're going to go like, yeah, no thanks.
This deck is sacrificing a lot of creatures, so you definitely want to dedicate some amount to a recursion package.
Yeah.
And because a lot of what we're doing is colorless, this is certainly a Goblin Welder deck. This is definitely a Feldon of the Third Path deck.
Yeah.
Things that will get the big fatties that you just sacrificed into your graveyard back onto the battlefield so you can emerge them for even more value or even more ETBs.
I would encourage you just to look up a Feldon deck list.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll see a lot of cards. You're like, oh, yeah, they're huge. You know, for 3 mana, I get a copy of this 9-drop. Like, well, that card's probably pretty good in this deck, too.
Oh, yeah. I will mention that I have a deck that's very similar to this. Card acceleration is so important. You are going to dump your hand. Anything that draws cards, and I mean draws cards, not Thrill of Possibility, which is just card selection, is going to be
very good.
So important.
Yeah.
So draw.
Okay, cool. Very good times. All right. Next up, we have a better Bosch.
It's literally Bosch, but just so power-crept.
Yeah. So yeah, Bosch is funny. This is actually a real card.
He just ate Bosch.
Yeah.
Literally, that's what his name is. Imskir Iron-Eater.
Bosch Eater, as far as I'm concerned.
He is 6 black and a red, so he's 8 mana, like Bosch. Except he's a demon with affinity for artifacts, so he costs less for all the artifacts you control.
Okay.
When he enters the battlefield, you draw X cards and you lose X life, where X is half the number of artifacts you control rounded down. So he just ETBs and draws cards.
Okay.
Immediately, and then has the Bosch activated ability. 3 in a red, sacrifice an artifact, deals damage to the sacrificed artifact's mana value to any target.
All right, so step 1, you go to EDH Rec, you just look at the Bosch list. You look at Bosch, you see what's going on there for the red side of things.
That is what you're throwing. All of the stuff in a Bosch list is going to give you an idea of what ammunition you're dumping into the Imskir Iron-Eater engine.
And now let's talk about how to make Imskir cost way less.
You just need a ton of artifacts.
Yeah.
Tons. You
Including
draw
the artifact lands.
Oh, yeah. The first thing you do is you add Darksteel Citadel, you add Great Furnace, you add the black one, which we all remember its name, to this deck. And you probably even add the treasure one as well.
Oh, yeah, Treasure Vault.
Treasure Vault.
Treasure Vault?
That one, yeah.
Whatever. You add artifact lands that are a lot out there. They're all going to make, not only do they tap for your commander, they make your commander cost less, and they draw you cards.
Bananas.
Yeah, that's real nuts.
Retrofitter Foundry is a very cheap artifact that makes more artifacts. This is a great thing to slam on turn 1. You make another artifact on turn 2. It's just a bunch of artifacts in a box.
Yeah. Noble's Purse is hilarious. It comes in with coin counters, and you tap it to remove a coin counter to create a treasure token. So this is a way to get just 4 additional artifacts total on the battlefield. And again, if each artifact is making your commander cost less, and then you can sack the artifacts later for mana, it's just so much value.
All on its own, Noble's Purse will make your commander cost 4 less and draw you 2 cards.
Yeah,
all on it, just on
by
its own.
itself. Yeah, pretty good.
Canoptic Scarab Swarm is a great late game one. This is a Warhammer card. It's 4 mana for an insect with flying. When it enters the battlefield, exile target player's graveyard. For each artifact or land exiled this way, make a 1/1 colorless insect artifact creature token with flying. Woohoo! It's just a ton of artifacts in one box that will make your commander cost even less and draw more cards in the late game. I genuinely think this deck is going to be sacking your commander and replaying your commander and sacking your commander and replaying your commander because you can keep reducing its casting cost by the number of artifacts you control.
Yeah, and it's only, the fact that it has affinity makes this very, very powerful. Cards like Big Score, there's a few cards like this where you discard cards and you draw cards and you also get treasure tokens. So it's just good acceleration, good card selection. You're in black-red, you've got all the reanimation effects at your disposal as well. So you're not afraid to throw stuff in the bin in this deck. In fact, you're trying to throw it all in the bin and draw as many cards as possible, or lose all the cards in your hand because your commander is going to draw you them again.
Seems great.
Yeah.
Ruin Grinder is great in this deck. That's a big thing to throw. When it dies, each player may discard their hand and draw 7 cards. That's incredible. It's also probably very good in your Herigast deck. A lot of these things are going to be stuff we already talked about. Big artifacts that you can reduce the casting cost of that will fling for a ton of damage.
Yeah, the Sojourner's Companion kind of stuff. Yeah. Metalwork Colossus also costs way cheaper. Mycosynth Golem. Again, these cards all go great in the Herigast deck as well.
Yep. The funniest move, I think, is Liquimetal Torque because you can turn your commander into an artifact and fling himself to deal 8 damage and then
climbs
recast
into a catapult.
it.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
So you draw even more cards.
Yeah.
I think you even run Liquimetal, the one that only does that.
Yeah. That's kind of cool. And you're black-red, so Liquimetal Torque is also just a perfectly normal add into your deck.
It's just a cheap artifact that also reduces the casting cost of your commander by 1, effectively 2. It taps for
you play Liquimetal and Abrade in these types of decks. Easy.
The weird thing about it is it doesn't give you good ways to cheat other things into play. You do have to get the Spine of Ishsaw into the battlefield in order to fling it.
To start it off,
So you do want a ton of mana or stuff like Karn Legacy Reforged that benefits from having a ton of artifacts on the battlefield.
It's going to give you that.
It's at the beginning of your upkeep, add colorless for each artifact you control. Perfect. This mana can't be spent to cast non-artifact spells. That's fine. Until end of turn, you don't lose this as Deaths and Phases end. So those kind of ramp pieces that give you mana for the amount of artifacts you control, which there are plenty of, will help you cast these big things that Imskir wants to throw.
Yeah, I like that a lot. You also have Chiskoria, Forge Tyrant. This has affinity for artifacts, just like your commander, so it might just cost red. Whenever it attacks, you exile the top 5 cards of your library. You can cast an artifact from among them. If you do, it has affinity for artifacts.
Perfect.
So again, look up Bosch decks, look up Chiskoria decks. Those are the easiest starting points to understand what level of insane things you can do with a deck like this.
Yeah, Imskir is broken. This is a very, very powerful deck that's going to draw you a ton of cards. It's very easy to loop things.
Yeah, it reminds me of Hogak a little bit.
There's a creature that sacrifices, it comes in, it sacrifices a creature. I believe it gives you treasures equal to its mana value. The card I'm thinking of is a Ruthless Technomancer. 3 in a black. When it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice another creature you control. If you do, create a number of treasure tokens equal to that creature's power.
Hey.
So not mana value, it's power, but that's okay. So it makes 5 treasures when you sacrifice your commander, and that reduces basically his whole casting cost again.
Yeah, that
seems
very
powerful.
Good. And you can also use it to sack treasures and bring something with lower power back, like Threefold Thunderhulk's really good in this deck because it's a 0/0 that enters the battlefield with a bunch of counters on it. But
nice,
the count is 0 in the graveyard.
Cool.
Yeah, Technomancer, Threefold Thunderhulk.
Those are all good because they come in with a ton of bodies. Mirror Battlesphere is great too.
Yeah.
So your commander is great, 4 artifacts, I'll draw you 2 cards.
I love it.
This deck's sweet. Again, you're going to want recursion like what we talked about before. Goblin Welder, Trash for Treasure, Duretti, Scrap Savant. All of these take artifacts in your graveyard and put them on the battlefield.
Yay. Portal to Phyrexia. is
Yuck.
one of those cards in this deck.
You can throw the portal, bring the portal back.
Yeah, a lot of the commanders we've mentioned in the last two, they want mana rocks. These are mana hungry, and so you're going to want to play all the mana rocks you can. If you have the big, very powerful ones, like the mana vaults, they go perfectly in these decks.
Poor Bosch. R.I.P.
R.I.P.
Imskir
You
here.
play Bosch in this deck, though, right?
Bosch probably goes in the deck. I don't know if you need him, but you could.
Yeah, just so that he doesn't feel too left out.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
All right, up next, the cutest little boy.
Yeah, it's cute. It's Lil.
It's Kudo.
It's Kudo.
King among bears. Green and a white for a legendary 2/2 bear. Other creatures have base power and toughness 2/2 and are bears, in addition to their other types.
Hooray! So you basically can make it's bear tribal.
Yep. This is Ayula's husband.
Yeah, and
apparently.
it makes anything that's smaller bigger.
Yep.
Anything that's bigger smaller.
So you could definitely use Kudo as a hate piece and build this as a hate bear deck.
Ah, that's funny.
We've talked about hate bears pretty recently when we were talking about the other bear, like the Naya bear commander.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it today, but you put in your Grand Abolishers and your Drannith Magistrates. It makes Esper Sentinel bigger. That's pretty good.
That's funny.
The big one here is Elish Norn.
Yeah, creatures your opponent's control get -2/-2. By the way, this bear affects every card on the battlefield.
Yeah. So basically, Elish Norn says, your creatures, they die. My creatures are 4/4s.
And Elish Norn is a 2/2 now.
Yeah, she's a widow. She's got little bear ears.
Baby. You're playing cards like Reverence in this deck, which I think is hilarious because it says creatures with power 2 or less can't attack you.
No creatures can attack me.
No creatures can attack me. Yeah, Reverence for the bears.
Pretty sweet. I like this trick a lot.
Oh, yeah, this is real good.
Delney Streetwise Lookout says, creatures you control with power 2 or less can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. I guess that's not super relevant.
Everything's a bear, yeah.
If an ability of a creature you control with power 2 or less triggers, the ability triggers an additional time. That's all my creatures.
Yeah, so my Esper Sentinel gets double triggers. My Welcoming Vampire now will draw me more than one card.
I don't think that works because
No?
it triggers only once each turn. Yeah.
Ah.
Welcoming Vampire, unfortunately, will only
Sad.
it just draws one card off of all of your creatures. So it's pretty good in this deck,
Only
but you
one
can't
bear
double that
allowed at
trigger.
a time. Well, how about this? Ayula gets double
That
triggers.
seems good.
Yeah, so whenever another bear enters the battlefield, which is now every creature in your deck, you either put 2/1 counters on target bear, which is every creature in your deck, or any creature on the battlefield, notably, or target bear you control fights target creature you don't control.
Nice. And if you're putting counters on them, they can clearly fight anything
Yeah.
on the battlefield.
Even if it's not, you just have regular 2/2s, and you're like, you know what? I can kill anything. Because usually it's like an opponent's got 10/10 fight spells look real bad, but now all your fight spells look great.
Pretty good. You know how big everything's going to be.
Yeah, pretty hilarious.
So if you're putting Ayula in, you could definitely build this as a bear deck. I think it's better as a token deck. My
Yeah.
favorite build of Kudo is that you just go super, super wide and you include all of the effects that just make a ton of 1/1s.
That are now bears.
Because 2/2s are twice as good as 1/1s.
True.
Pretty sweet. So I think this is a green-white token deck. Shocking. But if you put in stuff like Charismatic Conqueror that makes a 1/1 white vampire with lifelink,
Yeah.
now it's a 2/2 vampire bear with lifelink whenever an artifact or a creature your opponents control enter untapped.
Yeah, it's like Blind Obedience. Or it's like the Thalia. I forget which one that has artifacts. I think it's Blind Obedience. Adeline, Resplendent Cathar is great. Makes a ton of 1/1s for each opponent you have.
2/2s.
2/2, sorry. Rabble Rousing. This is the card that ends the game. 4 in the white, hideaway 5. Whenever you attack with one more creatures, you make that many 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. Now they are 2/2 green and white citizen bear tokens. Then if you control 10 or more creatures, you can play the exile card without paying its mana cost. This card reads as play 5 mana, swing the entire board out, make another huge board. If you untap, it's game over.
Yeah. I mean, any card that just makes a ton of 1/1, Scoot Swarm is bananas.
Yeah. Bananas.
Like, it's obviously...
Bear Swarm.
But like, yeah, Bear Swarm.
Bear Swarm.
Farmer Cotton is an X spell that makes X 1/1 white halfling. Now they're halfling bear tokens. It also makes food. It's just an outrageous rate for a ton of stuff.
Call the Copper Code similar, make a bunch of 1/1s, Secure the Waste, make a bunch of 1/1s.
I even like it in decks that are like base 0 decks where the 2/2 is also buffing. So like a Stonecoil Serpent has a base 0/0.
Yeah.
Now it's base 2/2 and all of the X's are gravy.
Yeah, that's cool. You can pay for 1 and it becomes a 3/3, or just pay for a 0, it's just a 2/2. That if your commander is still alive, which is kind of cool.
Threefold Thunderhulk is coming back because it is base 0/0, and when it enters the battlefield or attacks, create a number of 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens equal to its power.
So you're going to have 5 because it comes in with 3/1 counters.
And the gnomes you make are 2/2s.
Yep, pretty good. Termagant Swarm is a Warhammer card with Ravenous, so when it enters the battlefield with X1 counters on it, and if it's 5 or more, you can draw a card. When it dies, you create a number of 1/1s equal to its power, so X and a green, so pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, go wide. Get your Toski in there. Toski's buff now. It says
2/2.
Swirl Bear.
Yeah, that draws you a bunch of cards.
Yeah, this is a super, super go wide deck. Honestly, it's just anything that makes 1/1 tokens and your commander and you're in business.
Yeah,
probably
and it's just
utilize.
hilarious against your opponents because all their creatures are now 2/2s, so there's a lot of stuff you can do there.
Yeah. And don't play Elish Norn unless you want to definitely lose your commander.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That would be hilarious.
Sweet. I mean, I think Kudo's very cool, and it's already getting a lot
Modern
of love.
Horizons giving more love to the Bears, which is always awesome.
Okay.
Someone call Graham.
All right. We are going to take a quick break, and when we return, we are going to talk about the most powerful commander in Modern Horizons 3, hands down. We'll see you after the break.
It's High Slime. I introduced myself. I'm Felix Five Boots, the use and shoes who never loses. My fancy footwear strikes fear into my opponents, but they're also comfy because I stuffed my famous boots with Bombas. They are the best socks out there, and by golly, that come with all the fixins. Anti-blister tabs, cushioned footbeds that feel like fancy little foot pillows, all soft like. They even got moisture-wicking merino wool and honeycomb arch support. Now my feet don't have arches, but boy, if they did, woo-wee! And Bombas has a 100% happiness guarantee. So if a sock gets eaten by a hog or absorbed into your gelatinous body, they'll do what they can to make it right. Plus, me and Bombas, we ain't so different. When you deal combat damage, I give you an extra trigger. Well, when you buy Bombas socks, tees, or underwear, they give an extra piece of clothing to someone in need. That's a 2-for-1 even an old slime ball like me can support.
Get comfy this spring and get back with Bombas. Head over to bombas.com/commandzone and use code COMMANDZONE for 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/commandzone and use code COMMANDZONE at checkout.
Browsing for some new tech?
Yeah, I'm building Tiamat and Archidekt. Ooh, how about Zergo and Ojutai?
Did you just drag and drop that card image directly into your deck?
Yep, with Archidekt, you can drag and drop card images from EDH Rec or Scryfall directly into the deck list. No typing required.
That is so cool.
Ooh, okay, check this out. I'm gonna drag and drop Dragon Storm into the deck, and then boom, I'm gonna drop a bunch of dragons on the battlefield.
A 9-drop, huh? Seems ambitious.
It was just for the pun. Archidekt is the best place to browse, brew, and playtest commander decks. Just go to archidekt.com/commandzone to get started.
That's ARCHIDEKT.com/commandzone.
Welcome back, everybody. We're talking about the most powerful commanders in Modern Horizons 3, and this next one is a doozy.
It's probably the dumbest card they've made in a long time.
It is the dumbest card they've made in a long time.
This is like the dumbest card since Kinnan, probably.
Yeah, and it's...
Also green-blue. This is the dumbest card since Urza, Lord High Artificer.
Yeah, Modern Horizons, we knew there was going to be one. Would I have guessed it was on a bird? I don't know.
Go birds! This should be right up your alley.
That's true. I love the bird.
Do you want to read it?
Nadu, Winged Wisdom.
I don't want to read it.
1 a green and a blue, so 3 mana altogether for a 3/4 flying.
Okay.
Already pushed.
Yeah, 3/4
It's already
flying for
way
3.
too big. Why doesn't it die to lightning bolt?
Yeah. Yeah, right?
It's already pushed.
Yeah, 3/4. It could have been a 1/1, by the way, and it still would be ridiculous.
Creatures you control have. So all of your creatures have this ability.
Including Nadu.
Whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. Untapped.
Unreal.
Otherwise, put it into your hand. This ability triggers only twice each turn.
Oh.
So
every single creature you have, this can trigger twice.
Yeah.
So you could potentially draw, let's say if you have 3 creatures on the board, you could draw 3 cards, put 3 lands on the battlefield. That's an option.
Yeah. It's up to 6.
Up to 6, yeah, because
If you
each
can
creature can
target
do
them all
it
for
twice.
free.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, okay, well, spells. Okay, let's talk about the first part before we get into it.
Yeah, okay. So there's one way to build this deck that's very kind of like Ivy, where you
Yes.
put in spells in the deck and you're targeting your stuff intentionally. And you're building around spells that target your creatures. And this is a very powerful way to build this. You use like slip through spaces or shadow rifts that give creatures evasion and draw a card. And in addition, you get the Nadu trigger.
Yeah, it's great. You get a Nadu trigger. You replace the card in your hand as a cantrip. It already is a cantrip too for like
Yes,
slip through
you're up
space. You're
cards.
up a card. Yeah, it's sweet. Nice, fun.
Good with fight spells even. You could target your stuff and their stuff, fight, get an extra draw
Yeah.
out of it. Blink spells. Very powerful. You can draw a card every time you blink a creature.
Yeah, and then the creature has a new instance of the ability when it comes back.
Yes.
So you can do it twice more.
If you blink Nadu, all of your creatures have a new ability, so they can do it twice more.
Wow.
These, like, all of these are very powerful. If you have spells that target a ton of creatures all at the same time.
Oh, any number of target creatures with Sway of Illusion, they become the color of your choice until end of turn, draw a card.
Nice.
So, yeah, that could just be target 5 things, draw 1 card, and then you get 5 Nadu triggers.
Or you get X spells like March of Swirling Mist that say up to X target creatures phase out. Or Silk Guard, Change of Plans. All do very similar things. Protect your board and draw you a card for each creature you target with the spell.
Yeah, you better be protecting Nadu because if you don't remove Nadu immediately, you could just lose the game.
That's
Straight up.
That's part of the thing I hate about Nadu is, first of all, if they to go to remove it, it triggers.
Yeah. So you're getting a trigger no matter what, which is already like, okay, fine.
And then if you have a protection spell for it, it triggers again and then phases out. So you've drawn 2 cards and your opponent is down a spell.
Yeah. And you kept your commander around.
Who's entirely busted. So that's like the first way to build this deck.
Yeah, I guess we can talk about a couple more things.
Yeah, it's like the targeted matters stuff.
Yeah,
so we've seen this with Ivy.
Yeah, look up an Ivy deck. Venerated Rot Priest is going to kill people by giving them poison counters. Storm Chaser Drake draws you cards when it becomes a target of a spell you control. Season of Growth does a similar thing. Vesuvian Diplomancy is going to create a copy of cards, so you can create a copy of Nadu, and now you have 2 stacks of Nadu's thing on every single creature, so you can do 4 times per creature.
That's incredibly powerful. That's a very powerful deck we just described. It's a ton of card advantage. Ivy's a very powerful deck. That is not the good way to build this deck.
Yeah, because Nadu says spell or ability.
Why?
Because Ivy doesn't even say ability, which is nuts. So let's name off a few cards. Tell me what they have in common. Lightning Greaves, Shuko, and Umbral Mantle.
They have a free equip cost.
Equip cost of 0. What is that? It's a targeted ability. So if you have Ivy and not Ivy, if you have Nadu and any green creature, you can literally and a Lightning Greaves, you get to swap back and forth for 0 mana and activate it 4 times immediately.
These are playable cards, right? Like Lightning Greaves is powerful. Shuko is powerful. Umbral Mantle is a little bit more expensive, but it untaps your creature. Even Swiftfoot Boots works this way.
Yeah.
Because it only has 1 for equip. If you hit a land off of Nadu's ability, it comes in untapped and you get another activation on Swiftfoot Boots for free.
Yikes.
So even Skull Clamp, which is 1 to activate.
Right. Yeah, anything that's 1 to activate is just so good in the deck anyway.
Paradise Mantle is 1 to equip, and then the creature taps to add mana.
So you can move it to something else, yeah.
All of these can mean that you're drawing 8 cards. You're drawing 4 cards.
Turn 1 Elf, turn 2 Lightning Greaves, turn 3 Nadu, equip the Elf twice, equip Nadu twice. That's 4 cards. Yeah. Potentially 4 lands, potentially 1 land, 3 cards. Either way, it's 4 cards.
Just immediately.
For nothing.
And that's just the equipment.
Yeah, there's even more ways to break Nadu.
So Ophedo Alchemist and Seeker of Skybreak are both untapped creatures. They're creatures that can tap to untap target artifact or creature or untap target creature.
So technically, they can do it to themselves infinite number of times.
Right.
However, Nadu's like, only 2 times per creature. So
yeah, hang on. Only twice for some reason.
So it's my turn. I have a Seeker or an Ophedo Alchemist, and it is able to tap, and I have Nadu out. That single turn, I can tap it to target itself, untap it, tap it to target itself, untap it. That's 2 activations of Nadu right there.
Yeah.
You pass the turn.
Yep.
You do it twice again on their turn. They pass the turn. You do it twice again on their turn. You do it pass it one more time. You can do it like 8 or 9 times per turn cycle rotation.
You can do it 9 times because on the last one you can untap something else.
Oh, right. You can untap. You can tap it, untap itself, and then choose another thing to untap with it.
Right.
Yeah. And it doesn't even need to be
Yeah.
tapped. It can just be a creature that gets targeted by an ability.
Yeah. And that's a 2-mana creature. You can play that on 2. You play your Nadu on 3. That immediately that happens.
Yeah. So ridiculous.
It's insane. And this works with landfall abilities. So if you hit lands, you can keep chaining stuff off. Like Bristly Bill says, whenever a land enters the battlefield, you put a counter on target creature. Now, anytime you hit a land off of a Nadu ability, you can target a different creature, put a counter on it, and it triggers again.
Retreat to Coral Helm is great because you can use it to tap or untap a target creature, so it gets to keep going. Or you can scry one to make sure the next thing you hit is what you want.
Wow! You can play a Scoot Swarm, and then you have more creatures to keep targeting, and then it keeps targeting over and over again.
You know what? I think I'm just going to build Nadu now.
Yeah, I mean, you put in Displacer Kitten. Displacer Kitten targets the creature. You can blink Nadu, give them more, reset all your creatures. Now they can trigger 2 more times each turn.
Should we?
Why does this card exist?
I don't know. I really don't know. Because we have complained about cards that are similar in power level. Ivy was like, it's whatever. You have to cast a spell. It's going to cost cards from your hand to do this. The thing about Nadu that really makes it just dumb, in my opinion, is that you don't need to actually exert and use resources to keep it going. That's why I didn't like Kinnan, because it's like turns all your mana rocks and makes you more mana, tons of infinite mana combos, so you don't have to do that much work to just take a 20-minute turn, and that to me is not that entertaining.
No.
Nadu's even easier than Kinnan.
It's not even...
In some ways.
It's not even that it's more powerful than Kinnan. It's not definitive. So Kinnan, you make infinite mana, ta-da, great.
Yeah,
you get to
hooray.
activate Kinnan infinite times, congratulations.
Yeah.
This you have to do over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And because it doesn't go infinite.
Yeah, every time it's
It
like
goes
tap
a
it.
lot.
All right, that's going to trigger my commander. I'm going to look at the top corner of the library. Okay, it's a landing on the battlefield. All right, well, I'm going to do it again. All right, well, I'm going to do it again. All right, well, I'm going to do it again. And that is when it really starts to add into this. And you start drawing so many cards. And then you just fill up your hand.
The most frustrating thing about this card is there are so many points where they could have nerfed it.
Yeah, right.
The land could have come in tapped.
Play tapped.
It could have been non-token creatures.
It could have been only spells. It could have been only
abilities.
Even only abilities.
It
Yeah.
could have triggered once.
Yeah.
Why does it trigger twice?
It could have been only on other players' turns.
Why does it have 4 toughness?
Only on your turn. It could have cost 5 mana instead
Why
of
does
3.
it fly?
Why is it in green, blue? The best colors for this exact thing.
It's a completely aggravating card. And it's extremely powerful. And if you want to build it, then it's going to be extremely powerful.
Yeah.
But
At the very least, Thrasios, it costs 4 to activate his ability.
you have to make infinite mana.
You got to make a ton of mana to do the thing. Nadu's just the fact that there are tons of equipment that cost 0 to equip, and tons of abilities that just trigger without you having to do anything. It was like Landfall, Retreat to Coral Helm, and all that stuff. And then the worst offenders are the Fellow Alchemist, Seeker of Skybreaks.
Yeah.
9 times in a single turn rotation.
2 cards.
We've already talked about how powerful, and the reason why Prophet of Krufix got banned is because you basically took 3 turns additional. Nadu has a similar effect and a similar feel at the table, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna play a Fellow Alchemist on 2. You're gonna play Nadu on 3. You're gonna untap with 10 lands.
Yeah,
like
potentially.
you have 3 lands on the battlefield. Let's say you hit on half of them. You hit lands.
8.
You untap with 8 lands on turn 4, and you've cast nothing else.
Yeah, and in fact, if anything, you've only drawn cards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such an aggravating card design.
And there are people listening right now that are going, and that's why I'm building Nadu right now.
I know.
And there's people that are going, and that's why I'm killing Nadu the moment I see it. But then
it will cantrip.
It will cantrip. And even then, if they have a couple of pieces out, Nadu is just going to get to work. And even then, if you do get rid of it, they'll just recast it again because they got a bunch of lands off of it.
And it's only 3 mana.
Yeah, or it's 5 mana or whatever. But like they had this Seeker Skybreak plus Nadu means they're probably gonna have like 5 lands on the battlefield by the time it gets back, and then they're just back to step 1. Yeah.
It's
I don't know.
Needless to say, Nadu is not in game nights.
Yeah, Nadu's not you. You will not be seeing Nadu ever played by someone like me.
No.
Nada. It's interesting too because we've had such a long history now. In the past 2 years, it feels like Wizards has been doing everything they can to say only once per turn, only at sorcery speed, and then Nadu just comes out of nowhere. And it's just like, oh man, I'm just going to fly over all of the restrictions we have been self-imposing to keep things fun. And I'm just going to wipe it all off. Like this card potentially, I don't know. I never like to call if something's going to get banned or not. But this has grounds of people being like, nah, just get rid of it. We don't need this.
It's so aggravating that red removal has to target it twice. Like, I think the 4th point of toughness is the part I hate about it the most.
Yeah, the 3/4. Yeah. I mean, 4, we've seen...
Because you have to, like, spend... Like, your braid doesn't kill it.
Yeah, your braid doesn't kill it. I mean, we had a lot of, like, during the Atraxa Breya era where it's like, oh, 4 damage is actually really relevant. And I don't know. Now, the fact that it costs 3... Right? If this costs 6, 7 mana, okay, fine.
Sure. It's busted. But
it's busted.
But it's
you can see it coming. It's not going to come out that early. Recasting is really tough, but the fact that it gets it back to casting itself is really where it starts to get annoying. And we already saw how powerful that was with the black-red artifact.
Imskir,
Imskir or whatever. So
yeah, I think that it's most annoying because it like implies that Wizards thinks that Magic players want incredibly pushed, overpowered cards, and I don't think that's the case necessarily.
I don't even think it's a great card for any. I can't name a single format where Nadu is like, oh man, thank goodness Nadu exists.
Right.
There's so many more parts where I'm like, oh yeah, you know, I always wanted to play a Bosch deck, but I didn't like it was mono red and it felt really hard to get up to 8 and have your mana removed.
Yeah.
Oh, Imskir really fills that in and it's still really powerful, but it's, you know, okay, it's not that nuts, but it's still really good. Good enough to be like, oh cool, what a fun commander. Nadu's just like so far beyond anything that we've talked about today.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
It's very aggravating. That being said,
if you want to build it, let us know in the comments. This episode ain't over yet.
Yeah.
But go nuts.
Let's move on to the next commander. It is significantly less powerful. It's Rosheen, Roaring Prophet. 2 red and a green for a giant shaman. She's a 4/4. When Rosheen enters the battlefield, mill 6 cards.
It's also very angry.
Oh yeah, she angry Rosheen.
Look at that face.
You may put a card with X in its mana cost.
She heard Nadu was getting printed. Sorry.
Into your hand. Then reveal. Then has an activated ability. Tap, reveal any number of cards with X in their mana cost in your hand. Add colorless for each card revealed this way. Spend this mana only on costs that contain X.
All right, this is X spells matter of the deck. She comes in, mills cards, and then you get to bring a card with X in its mana cost back. And then you can do the Metal Worker thing where you tap it, reveal cards with X to add colorless to your mana pool for each card, and then only use that mana for X.
Yeah.
Wow, look at all the ways they restricted this to only be about a certain thing.
Wowee!
It's like not
Nadu.
What a
thematic, interesting way to have to build.
Yeah.
You want all your cards in your deck to have X in their
That's
costs.
fun. I can see someone that wanted to build an X Hydra deck that this is going to be the perfect commander for that.
Love that for them. Rosheen's cool. I mean, the first rule with Rosheen is put as many X spells into your deck as possible.
Yeah, for sure.
Anything that can have X in its mana cost should. And if it doesn't have X in its mana cost, you want X in its text box somewhere because you can use this mana on that as well.
Yeah, you never want to cast Rosheen and not hit a spell.
Yeah, for sure. The density is a huge deal because you want like at least 3 in your hand, so she makes more mana than she costs.
Oh yeah, absolutely. 2 to 3 in your hand minimum. With Metal Worker, that's the same thing. In fact, sometimes you hold cards in your hand so you can just activate Metal Worker again because you need to get that extra mana off it.
If you want to search for X spells on Scryfall, we want to do a quick handy search. You just search for mana greater than or equal to the braces X. So that just
we'll show that on screen as well.
It's on screen. That just means that like it's anything
greater
that
than
has X in its mana cost.
or equal to, and has the cost of X.
But some of the good ones.
Yeah, Awaken the Woods, X green makes X 1/1 green forest dryad land creature tokens. They can't tap the turn to come in, but that's probably why you play Anger in this deck. Astral Cornucopia.
Perfect.
Love this.
Because it's XXX for an artifact. It comes in with X charge counters on it. So you can take all that mana from Rosheen and put it into a mana rock. Because it taps, chooses a color, and add 1 mana of that color for each charge counter on Astral Cornucopia.
Yes. Animus Awakening, X and a green. You reveal the top X cards. You put all lands from among them onto the battlefield tapped and under your control, and the rest on the bottom of your library. If there are 2 or more instants and sorceries in your graveyard, you get to untap those lands. So there's a good chance with Awaken the Woods and all that stuff that
And all your
could
X
happen.
spells.
Yeah, all your X spells, yeah.
Most of them are instants and sorceries, if they're not Hydras, of course.
Yeah, Hydras, yeah.
This isn't Hydra, but it sure looks like one. It's Walking Ballista.
Does it?
Like its mana cost, I guess.
I'd say it looks more like an Astral Cornucopia
Yeah, it does.
than the Walking Ballista.
Walking Ballista is going to be a win con in this deck. You're going to make a ton of mana. You're going to try and keep drawing a ton of cards to fill your hand, make more and more mana with Rosheen, and you can dump it all into Walking Ballista.
You can't dump it into Walking Ballista, actually.
Well, when you cast it.
Yeah, when you cast it, not for its activated ability specifically.
Right, of course.
But you're going to make a lot of mana in this deck anyway because it's red-green X spells, so more
Big
than
mana
Rosheen
deck.
should be making, Comet Storm is the win con in this deck. You cast it for 10 or whatever, kick it 3 times, everyone takes a bunch of damage, and kills them.
Seems good. Other than that, there's a ton of really sweet, very powerful X spells. Mawloc is awesome. This is a Tyrannid that comes in and fights something and draws you a card.
Yeah.
Clan Defiance can either deal X damage to target creature with flying, X damage to target creature without flying, or X damage to target player or planeswalker.
Kill them all.
Nice, flexible removal spell. And you can choose 1 or more, so you can choose 3 things.
Yeah, similar also Klaus Will, I think it's
yeah,
X
that's
red,
in
red.
here.
Yeah.
That's a
So
great one.
More X spells. Pest Infestation, really good
my
in this deck.
God.
Make a bunch of destroy up to X target artifacts and or enchantments, and you can create twice that many X1/1 black and green pest creature tokens that gain you a bunch of life. I love it.
This is definitely a Hydra deck, and there's some cool draw spells that are going to find you a bunch of Hydras. And if you're not even going to cast the Hydras, they can live in your hand to make more mana with your commander.
Yes, that's very important.
So Ecological Appreciation says, search your library and graveyard for up to 4 creature cards with different names that each have mana value X or less and reveal them. An opponent chooses 2 of those cards. Shuffle the chosen cards into your library and put the rest onto the battlefield. Exile this card. So
The fact that it searches your graveyard is great because your commander mills 6 when it comes in.
yeah, I mean, it finds you 2 Hydras, right? It's just going to find you 2 things. You don't have to put a ton of mana into this X cost because you only need...
It's more than 2. If you find like 7 cards, right?
You find up to 4, but it's mana value X or less. But
Yeah,
Hydras have low mana value because they're XX2.
Yeah.
So they're 2 in the deck. So you only need to spend like 5 mana on this. You get 2 Hydras, and that's going to make you a lot of mana throughout the turn.
Yep.
Uncage the Menagerie will find you a ton of cards.
Yeah.
Search your library for up to X creature cards with different names that each have a converted mana cost X. Reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle your library.
This is probably one of the best cards in the deck. It can load your hand up, and then you tap your commander for 8 mana. 10 mana?
It only is going to find you 2 if X is 2. If you find, like, if you're getting more expensive cards, if your X is 3, you can find 3 of them. Your X's do have to match.
I see. Okay.
So it does have a little bit of a cap on it. This next one doesn't.
Oh, there it is. Enshrined Memories. Reveal the top X cards of your library. Put all creature cards revealed this way into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order.
Yeah, so this one you dump a ton of mana. You're going to get a ton of cards into your hand and use them to make more mana with your commander.
Yeah, I
it's
love it.
very, very snowball-y that way. The more mana you can make, the more mana you make later.
Yep.
There's a ton of great Hydras. You can look up Hydra lists anywhere. The 2 best ones are probably Voracious and Colonian Hydras.
Colonia's not an X spell, but it will double the 1/1 counters on all the ones that do just cost X green or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Finding your Hydras is going to be a big part of this deck.
Yeah. Get your Hydras out. Get your Hydras.
There's also other cards that care about X spells.
Oh, yeah. This one's really fun.
I agree.
I forgot this card existed.
Yeah.
Elementalist Palette. It's a 3-mana artifact. Whenever you cast a spell with X in its mana cost, you put 2 charge counters on Elementalist Palette. You can just tap it for 1 mana of any color, or you can tap it to add a colorless for each charge counter on it, and you can only spend that mana on costs that contain X. So this is a card that just gets better and better over the course of the game, and eventually just does a ton. And then Unbound Flourishing. This is like the X spells matters card, which is also a Modern Horizons card, notably.
Yeah. Whenever you cast a permanent spell with mana cost that contains X, double the value of X. Huge.
Yay.
Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery or activate an ability, if that spell's mana or that activation cost contains X, copy that spell or ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. So what is X? X is 2X. It's pretty good.
X is 2X. Really good with your Astral Cornucopia.
Oh, yeah.
Rosheen Meanderer, which must be related to Rosheen.
Yeah.
It's meandering. You can tap it to add 4 colorless mana, and you can only use that on costs that contain X. There you go.
Nexus is a very cool one from Warhammer, 1 and a green.
Yes,
it says
nuts.
basic lands you control have tap, add, colorless. Spend this mana only on costs that contain X. So it's effectively a mana doubler for 2 mana.
Yeah, very good. And now we've mentioned 2 mana dorks, which means Ragged Drag is coming into the mix.
Yeah.
Each creature you control with a mana ability on it gets +2/+2, including your commander. Whenever a creature you control with a mana ability is on it, untap it, so you get that extra ability. You get used again. And then whenever you cast a spell, if at least 7 mana was spent to cast it, you untap target creature gets +7/+7 gains trample until end of turn.
Ragged Dragger is a very cool win con in this deck. You're going to be definitely casting spells that are 7 mana or greater, so you can use Ragged Dragger to pump up Rosheen and send her to war.
There in the war, and you untap her, you get to pay her mana to play something else that after and the second main. Pretty good.
Untapping Rosheen's a big part of this. This is your primary mana source. So 1,000-year elixir that gives her haste and untaps her is going to be huge. And something like Sereth the Viper's Fang to protect her when she's untapped and untap her when she's tapped is going to be a huge protection piece.
Yep, and then there's a lot of cards that give haste in this deck. Rhythm of the Wild is one of them. A Rejuvenating Hot Springs, Anger. There's a lot of different ways to do it.
When your commander has a tap ability, haste is so important.
Yeah, very good. There's even Uncivil Unrest, which might be good in this deck. There's just a lot of different ways to give haste in red and green.
Yeah, Uncivil Unrest is good with all the Hydras.
Yeah.
All right, we're moving on to the biggest bad. Look at this art.
Yeah, this is kind of cool. It also describes me at the command zone here. It's a Shilgengar, Sire of Famine.
I've been saying Shilgengar because...
because of the Pokemon?
Because of the Pokemon.
Shilgengar! I will Shilgengar. Gengar is like one of the coolest Pokemon, yeah. All right, 3 black for a 6/6 Elder Demon with probably the coolest art.
It's Chris Morales art. It's a demon sitting on a throne of angel wings.
Angel wings, yeah. Just so cool. All right, it's a 6/6 Elder Demon with flying. It says sack another creature, create a blood token. If you sacrificed an angel this way, like the throne, create a number of blood tokens equal to its toughness.
There you go.
And guess what? This is actually an Orzhov commander because it has an activated ability for 3 Orzhov. So black, white, black, or white, black. Sacrifice 6 blood tokens. Return each creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. Those creatures are vampires in addition to its other types.
Vampire Angel's also a demon.
So cool. So it's sacking angels to make a bunch of blood tokens, and it's sacking those blood tokens to bring back the sacked angels, but now they're
as vampires?
Yeah, this guy is the Sire of Famine indeed.
It's so cool. First thing I looked at was angels. Specifically angels that can put themselves in the graveyard or fill up your graveyard are going to be very good.
True.
Angel of Suffering is if damage would be dealt to you, prevent that damage and mill twice that many cards. Careful.
Careful, you will mill yourself. You'll deck yourself very easily with this.
Good thing you have an angel sack outlet.
Yeah, add instant speed, notably.
One of my favorite cards, Angel of the Ruins, has
so
planes
good.
cycling, so it's 2. Go get a planes, put an angel in the graveyard. When it enters the battlefield, you exile up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments.
Yeah, and if you're able to get this back and sack it, you'll make 7 blood tokens.
Nice.
Which is a happy 5/7. This next one's a 3/6. It's a Radiant Solar, flying lifelink 6 mana. When it enters the battlefield or another non-token creature enters the battlefield, you venture into the dungeon.
Cool.
May not be relevant because you may just be paying a white to discard it to venture into the dungeon and gain 3 life. Never mind, you're still going into the dungeon.
Yeah, you just put it in the bin,
Yeah.
and it gives you another angel and a bunch of triggers when it comes in.
Yep.
So it's an angel with a high toughness, and it discards itself.
Yeah, it's a 6 toughness card.
It is actually very difficult to mill yourself in Orzhov, so you're going to have to use some of these blood tokens to fill up your graveyard.
Right, blood tokens notably, pay 1,
Yes.
tap, discard a card, draw a card.
So these angels that put
Sacrifice.
themselves in the bin and give you something to reanimate and value for discarding them are going to be very good.
Yeah, that's very cool. This is an angel deck, even though it is a demon up top. You're going to want to play a lot of angels. So Giada, Font of Hope is like your absolute best angel synergy card because it's a 2 mana rock basically for angels. And they come in with additional 1/1 counters for each angel you already control. So that means that toughness is going to get bigger and bigger as well.
Nice. If you are into Edict effects, I'm generally not, but if you are, this is a great Rampage of the Valkyries deck. 3 white black for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, make a 4/4 angel creature token with flying and vigilance. Whenever an angel you control dies, each other player sacrifices a creature.
Yeah, so good when you have, again, sacrifice another creature on your commander.
And a way to reanimate all of them.
Yeah, and reanimate all of them. So yeah, very good. Will be very controlly if you play this route, and you'll kill everyone, and they won't like you.
This is an incredible Battle Angels of Tyr deck.
Yay! I wish this card saw more play. It's hard to get off, but this deck does seem very good for it.
Because it's a 4-mana angel, so it comes down the turn before your commander.
Yep.
It has Myriad, so when it attacks, you make 2 token copies of 4/4s.
That can get sacked.
That can sacrifice them. So you make 8 blood tokens every time you attack with Battle Angels, assuming you sacrifice both of them after damage.
Yeah, and you're going to be gaining treasures or life based on what's going on there. So just a lot of good stuff on the Battle Angels of Tyr. The Myriad trigger is awesome because you get to sack them before they get exiled before the end of combat.
Cheap angels are going to be the name of the game in this deck because you do want angels on the battlefield to sacrifice to get blood tokens.
Yeah.
So like Sarah Avenger is white for a 3/3. You can't cast the spell during your first, second, or third turn of the game. That's fine as long as we cast it on 4 before our commander comes down.
Yeah.
Just 2 mana, make 3 blood tokens, and you can reanimate it later.
Yeah,
Great
there's
with
a
angel
lot
synergy.
of cards that are like that, like Guardian of the Great Door, that has additional cost to cast it, but it's basically a 2-mana 4/4 at some point if you're able to tap creatures and all that stuff.
Yeah. You just want angels that come down before your commander. Otherwise, your mana's a little bit too clunky.
Yeah. And you have angels, so that means you have reanimation on a lot of them. Angel of Indemnity has an encore cost as well as just when it enters the battlefield, you return the permanent with mana value 4 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. The encore cost is 8 mana, but you get the effect 3 times, right?
Yeah. More angels, more sacrifice.
Yeah, and pretty good to, again, have this come back later. You can bring back something else. There's a lot of powerful stuff to happen there.
There's a lot of angels that sort of recur themselves, and it's cool. You get to play like the black-white angels, which don't often fit into angel decks.
Yep.
But I want to mention a couple of ones that you may not think of before we move on. Lulu Loyal Hollyfont is an elephant angel.
Holy font! Yay, it's so cute.
It says at the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, great. Put a +1/+1 counter on each tapped creature you control, and then untap them.
So you can attack with your angels, which you probably want to do, and now you also get bigger toughness, and they become great blockers.
And it's an angel itself.
Yeah.
Wojak Investigator is a 3-mana 2/4 angel. It makes clues at your upkeep and has vigilance. So it's going to make you more artifacts. You probably have synergy built around that. Plus, it has higher toughness than power, which is going to be really good in this deck.
Oh, yeah, 2/4. And the 2/5, Merchant of Truth, whenever a non-token creature you control dies, investigate, and then clues you control have exalted. So if you're only attacking with one creature, each clue that you have from this and the Wojak Investigator will give your creature +1/+1.
One more is Sanctuary Warden. This is perfect in this deck.
So good.
4 white for an angel soldier. It enters the battlefield with 2 shield counters on it. But when it ETBs or attacks, you may remove a counter from a creature or planeswalker you control. If you do, draw a card and then make a citizen creature token.
Finality counters.
Let's get rid of those.
Yay.
Those are so inconvenient.
Yeah, that's very nice.
Very good in this
The
deck.
lease is also amazing in this deck. At the beginning of each end step, create X1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying, where X is the number of tokens you created this turn.
If you're sacking angels, you're going to be making a lot of
blood tokens, yeah.
which means you're making a lot of spirits as well.
Yep. I love it.
There's a couple of cool like blood cards. Voldaren Bloodcaster is a 2-drop that is a 2/1 flying, and it's whenever it or another non-token creature you control dies, create a blood.
Create the blood.
This is a great thing to play early in your curve, a great thing to reanimate. Gives you the blood tokens early so you can start building it up if you don't have some of those like 3 or 4 mana high toughness creatures.
Now that you're making tokens, you can start killing people with it.
Oh, yeah.
Combo Profiteering Mayor allows whenever one or more tokens enters the battlefield under control, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. It also copies the tokens your opponents are making. That's
Little
not as relevant.
value.
Mirkwood Bats, whenever you create or sack a token, each opponent loses 1 life. So that includes your commander's ability. So this is a way to just out of nowhere play this, sack some stuff, pay the cost of your commander, sack more things. Everyone just dies.
It's a huge amount of tokens coming in and leaving the battlefield.
Yeah.
I think Birkwood Mats.
Birkwood Mats. Rachel Reeks.
A really, really powerful engine in this deck. Or Disciple of the Vault. Whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may have target opponent lose 1 life.
Yep, Marionette Master, similar thing.
All those.
Those are the win cons in a deck like this,
Genuinely,
for sure.
I don't think these go in the deck if you're not focusing around angels, because that's how you're going to be making a ton of the blood tokens all at once.
Yeah. You might include like 1 or 2 at most, just as like another way, because you're playing an angel deck, you're probably going to be killing people just by hitting them.
Right. You've got 4/4 flyers. Swing.
Yeah.
Swing.
Yeah. And a lot of them have vigilance. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I think these are sort of your like take somebody over the top.
Yeah, totally.
Cards. You could also build this deck not around angels at all. I don't know why you do that. Black-white angels seems really sick. And
there's
look
also
at the commander.
so many aristocrats commanders in black-white that you could do if you want to do that.
Yes. If you want to build black-white aristocrats and use him as a sack
You got
outlet
options.
to make blood, you can. and then return all those creatures. You're probably building around creatures that ETB and make tokens, like Abhorrent Overlord or Chittering Witch.
Yep.
But there's a lot of examples for black-white aristocrats out there, so I don't think we need to go into too much.
Yeah, Nadir's Nightblade is also because you're making tokens that leave the battlefield.
Yeah.
So Shilgengar is awesome.
I love this card.
Yeah, very, very powerful.
All right, I believe we are on our last commander of MH3,
Woo!
and it is a doozy.
Okay.
This is the Necrobloom.
Necrobloom! 1 and white, black, and green. So many commanders cost this now.
I know.
A legendary creature, plant. It's a 2/7. It has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 0/1 green plant creature token. If you control 7 or more lands with different names, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token instead.
Oh, Field of the
Field
Dead.
of the Dead. On a commander.
And?
Land cards in your graveyard have Dredge 2.
It's back! It's Dredge!
Oh my gosh. So yeah, one of the most broken mechanics of all time has returned. And it gives every land in your graveyard Dredge 2. So you can return a land from your graveyard to your hand and mill 2 cards instead of drawing a card. You go to untap, upkeep, draw. You know what? I'm going to Dredge 2. So I'm going to bring this.
Well, you will hit every land drop.
You'll never miss a land drop if you're Jimmy Wong. You'll draw that into your hand and then you'll mill 2 cards instead. And guess what? The cards you milled might be a land, might have Dredge 2 on it. So you get a lot of selection that way. This is one of the fastest, best ways to mill yourself. Dredge is very powerful. The commander is both the payoff and the enabler.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting deck because I looked up what's going on EDH Rec for this already, and it's kind of just an Abzan landfall list.
So far, yeah.
And it looks very similar to other Abzan landfall lists, like Thalian the Gitrog monster is the other big one.
Gitrog monster.
If you want to build this around the Field of the Dead ability, you are absolutely you should. It'll be really fun. It'll be very powerful. You're playing extra land drops. You're playing all of the sort of normal landfall stuff.
Yeah.
So what we decided to talk about for this episode is focusing around the Dredge side of this because that's a very unique line of text.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in just doing landfall, go look at the Thalia and the Gitrog monster type EDH Rec page or just the Necrobloom EDH
It's already
Rec
up
page
on
right
EDH
now.
Rec, yeah.
So we're going to focus around the Dredge side of it.
Yeah.
Starting with the lands that are incredibly powerful with this ability.
Yeah, cycling lands.
Yes.
Yeah, so these go into your graveyard, you cycle them, you pay the mana to discard it, and then you draw a card. So there are a bunch that just pay the cost of what they tap for. So like Barren Moor, Tranquil Thicket, Secluded Steppe, you can cycle for just black, green, or white. At instant speed too, mind you.
Notably, you can replace that draw with a Dredge. So you pay a black, discard this card from your hand, and you can immediately dredge it back to your hand with that draw.
Yeah.
So basically this says pay a single mana, mill 2, return this land to your hand. Mill 2, return this land to your hand. You can mill a lot very, very fast at instant speed.
Yeah, that's basically the best part about that. So much milling.
Predictably, it's very good with the channel lands as well.
Yeah, because you're discarding them, and then they're going to do something, and then you're able to bring back Boseiju.
Over
who
and over
endures
and over.
and
as long
over
as you're
again.
drawing cards.
Yikes.
Yeah, Iganjo, Takanuma, they're all going in this deck for sure if you have copies. Mm-hmm. Notably, you can mill your entire deck with a cycler, one of the ones we mentioned before, or even Scattered Groves, which cycles for 2, with a Fluctuator. Well, I guess Fluctuator,
only works
with
with Scattered Groves type. Yeah.
But it says cycling abilities you activate cost up to 2 less to activate.
Yep.
So now you mill for free and return Scattered Grove to your hand
Over and over again.
mill
And just,
for free.
Yeah, you can mill as deeply as you want there.
Bone Miser was what I was thinking of. When you discard a land card, add black.
Yeah,
So this
there you go.
works with your Barren Moor. You pay a black, discard it, mill 2, return it to your hand. Now you have a ton of black mana in your mana pool, and you've milled your entire deck.
Yeah, there's probably ways to win the game just off of that alone.
Feels like there should be.
If there ain't, you can probably help us find it. Yeah, so all those are very good. Even the sacrifice lands like Strip Mine, Wasteland, the fact that you can buy them back with dredging every single time is so very powerful. Obviously, we've seen it happen anytime someone plays any of the play lands from your graveyards, and then they play a Strip Mine. They can Strip Mine people multiple times a turn. That's just awful. So you have the ability to do those sorts of things in this deck. So people that play against it, just keep in mind that should that player decide to go that route with it, you may end with no lands on your battlefield.
Yeah. It's also very powerful with recursion-based lands. So Takanuma, when you channel it, you
Mill
3, return a creature or planeswalker from your graveyard to your hand. And of course, you can dredge Takenuma back to your hand. But even something like Mortuary Mire, which comes in and puts a creature on top of your library, means it's effectively a tutor that you can get from your graveyard to your hand, put a creature on top of your library.
Yeah, you want to get to the point where you've milled yourself 30 times, and then you have so many options because all of the lands in your deck do something important and powerful and pretty relevant.
This is going to be a toolboxy list. You have a lot of lands with abilities. You have a lot of creatures that care about lands coming in and out and in and out. It's going to look more, this is more Gitroggy than it is landfall-y.
Yeah.
Although you'll have plenty of lands enter the battlefield as well.
Yep, that's true. Okay, let's talk about getting that graveyard all filled up outside of the mill ability that you already have from Dredge 2.
You're going to be very good at getting lands into your hand, so discard outlets for those lands are very powerful. News Constrictor says discard a card, it gets +1/+1. Ayula's Influence is green, but if you can pay for it, you can discard a land card and make a 2/2 green bear creature token.
That's pretty good.
I like a Loam Crafter Fawn in this deck, a weird little card from Wilds of Eldraine.
Yeah, it's a good one. When it enters the battlefield, you may discard one or more land cards. When you do, return up to that many target non-land permanents from your graveyard to your hand. So imagine you have like a 30-card graveyard. You discard 3 lands, return 3 of those permanents to your hand, and then the next turn you can dredge those lands back to your hand if you want it. Ugh.
Nantuko Cultivator does a very similar thing. You can discard a number of lands from your hand, and then you draw that many cards. You can either keep dredging to get those lands back in your hand, or just draw that many cards.
Yep.
This is going to be a turbo mill deck. You're trying to mill as fast as possible and use your graveyard as a toolbox. And Sylvan Library is an incredible dredge engine.
Oh, yeah, because it says draw 2 additional cards basically during your draw step. So that's 3 instances of Dredge 2 that could happen on any of the lands in your graveyard.
The cool thing is if you don't draw any cards with Sylvan Library, you don't have to pay any life. You could, so you mill, if you dredge 3 times,
you'll still dredge it all, but you don't have to draw that card to your hand.
You haven't drawn anything, so you don't have to pay any life.
Wow.
But if you dredge, draw, you will have to pay 4 life to keep that one card you did draw.
Right. So for each of those cards, pay 4 life or put that card back on the top of your library.
Right.
Yeah.
So it will dredge you.
You'll get dredged.
It does mean you can draw a little bit. You just have to pay some life for it.
Yep. Yeah.
All of these are going to be very powerful if you combine them with Gitrog Monster.
Yay! Let's just read Gitrog Monster again. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Gitrog Monster unless you sacrifice a land. You want to be doing that. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Can do. Whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, draw a card.
Aha.
Yeah. So that's how you can basically mill your entire deck a lot of times with Gitrog Monster, is that you have tons of ways to mill over and over again. You're dredging, milling, cycling, dredging, milling, cycling. You're getting all those triggers over and over again. You're drawing a ton of cards. You're just churning through your deck. This also leads to those like 20-minute turns.
Oh, yeah.
Gitrog Monster decks are very unfun to play against sometimes because they'll go, all right, untap Gitrog Monster. See you guys after lunch. I'm still going to be playing. This
is going to be one that you need to practice a lot. There's going to be really, really complicated lines. There's a ton of choices that you have to make along the way. Do I dredge here? Do I mill here? Or do I draw here? Do I reanimate this or this? Knowing your lines is going to make this deck play faster and make it more fun to play against. That being said, Gitrog Monster is great in this. Thalian the Gitrog Monster is also great in this.
So good.
Additional land drops, and it gives you additional draws, so you can dredge even more.
Yay.
We haven't talked much about being able to use the graveyard, but I think if you're dredging as much as we're talking about, you need your graveyard to be like a hand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it already is in that all your lands in there have dredge too.
Right.
But you want other cards in there that really can benefit from being in there.
Rite of Harmony is going to be an incredible flashback spell.
It's so good in this deck.
It says whenever a creature or enchantment enters the battlefield under your control this turn, draw a card. It's green and a white for an instant, but it flashes back for 2 green-white. So now, anytime you play a land, you make a token, it triggers Rite of Harmony.
Yeah.
And you can dredge or you can draw. And you can cast that from your graveyard.
Ugh, gross. Timeless Witness, better than Eternal Witness because you can eternalize it from your graveyard. It basically does what Ewit does. I really like Unburial Rites in this deck. I keep thinking that we're green-white, but we do have black in here because we're in Abzan. So you're able to return the creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it costs less from the graveyard, which is one of the best parts about this card.
I've seen this deck go, and originally I thought an effect like Genesis was going to be too expensive, which says at the beginning of your upkeep, if Genesis is in your graveyard, you may pay 2 and a green. If you do, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. But when you have as many lands as this deck is designed to make, the overcosted ability is not overcosted. It is so
lands.
Powerful. You always have lands to play. You need gas. So Genesis is a great card for that.
Yeah. And then, of course, this card, this commander makes 2/2 zombies, just like Field of the Dead, which is probably in the deck, by the way. So let's talk about tokens, because there are a lot of cards that do enjoy to create tokens thanks to what's in the graveyard or thanks to what you're doing with the graveyard.
Tormod the Desecrator is awesome in this deck.
So good.
Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, for instance, when you dredge a land, you create a tapped 2/2 zombie.
Hey.
Nice.
Yeah, that's going to happen a lot. Worm Harvest, create a 1/1 black and green worm for each land in your graveyard, and you can retrace it as well. It costs 5 mana, but this will make you 10, 12, 20 creatures sometimes.
And notably, Retrace doesn't exile. So if you have extra mana and you have lands in your hand, you can always cast this spell.
Yeah.
Turn Timber Sower says whenever one or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, create a 0/1 green plant creature token. Then you can sacrifice 3 creatures and return target land from your graveyard to your hand. You probably don't need to do that. You've got a lot of dredge going on.
Yeah.
But if you lose your commander, that'll help you get moving again.
And you're making a bunch of 2/2s, so that is just a redundant effect. It's going to be good when you can use it. You obviously want to put a lot of lands on the battlefield, so Azusa works quite well, especially if you're able to play with a Crucible package, playing 2 additional lands a turn.
Huge.
Oh, so much. This is where the turns get long. I'm going to replay this, I'm going to activate this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to cycle this, I'm going to dredge that instead. It's like that's when you're taking a 20-minute turn.
I'm not sure how good this next card is in the deck. It may be a little bit win more, but it definitely creates some loop-de-doops with your commander.
It's funny.
It's Perilous Forays. It's 3 green for an enchantment, so that's kind of a lot. But it says 1 sacrifice a creature. Search your library for a land card with basic land type and put it into play tapped. Then shuffle your library.
Land type. So that's cool. You can grab your Triumphs.
Yeah. And you sacrifice a creature and you make a creature when that land enters. So it's sort of, you're not sacrificing anything. You can search all of the lands with card types from your deck onto the battlefield, basically.
Yeah. A lot of times 2/2s aren't enough to close out the game, so being able to do stuff with them like this is very important. And again, it gives you more mana for your Genesis activations. It just gives you the mana to do those big turns later on.
Yeah. Stuff like Dread Return that you can sacrifice 3 creatures to reanimate something from your graveyard.
And flash it back from your graveyard as well.
Makes it, it's going to be the most important card probably in the deck is Dread Return.
Okay, let's talk about the ways that you're just going to...
This is one more way to use your token.
Yeah, it's Crypt Breaker. I love this card when it came out. Black man for a 1/1, you pay 1 in the black, tap, discard a card, put a 2/2 zombie creature on the battlefield, and then tap 3 untap zombies you control, draw a card, lose 1 life.
You're going to be able to make a ton of tokens in this deck, and you want so many ways to dredge.
Yeah.
So this turns your bodies into dredging or cards, and it discards the land in your hand to your graveyard so you can dredge if you get Bajuka Bogged or something like that.
Yeah. So the way this deck kind of wins is like with the big return all lands to the battlefield types effects. So Aftermath Analyst, we've already talked about. Keep an eye on this card. This card's going to be around for a while.
It's so powerful.
It's way better than World Shaper, which we all thought was very powerful when it came out, I think. It's a card that when it dies, you return all cards from your lands from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Aftermath Analyst, you can just do that for paying 4 mana. It's just good. Both of these you're going to have so many lands in the graveyard that at a certain point you don't care about dredging them anymore. Your graveyard's already been filled to the max. And then you can bring them all back if you have, what's the amulet that untaps tap lands when they come in?
A Vigor.
Yeah, Amulet of Vigor is very good in this deck, so you can use all that mana that same turn. And then you're casting like a Craterhoof, or you're casting an Eerie Ultimatum. Eerie Ultimatum's hilarious in this deck. How many zombie triggers are you going to get off casting an Eerie Ultimatum? So many.
Returns any number of permanent cards with different names from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you only get 1 of each basic, but you get all of your lands, all of your creatures, all of your enchantments, your artifacts from the graveyard into play. And if you can't win from that position, what are you doing?
What are you doing? Well, not winning. That's what you're doing.
Yeah. You're hanging out, chilling, dirty.
You are hanging out.
That is the Necrobloom. This is a wild deck and is going to be it's like a cool variant on Gitrog lands, I think. You can do some neat stuff. It's going to lead to a lot of decision trees. So again, practice,
this is the deck you have to practice. Anytime dredge is on a card, you got to understand how it works because you draw a lot of cards in Commander. And so knowing that, every time I draw a card, I have another option available is a lot.
All right, that's it. Those are all the commanders we're going to talk about for Modern Horizons 3. We are, of course, going to be covering all of the precons, so we'll be talking about those face commanders in those episodes. We'll spend lots of time talking about how those commanders work, what their deck should look like in their own private episode. So if we didn't talk about your commander and it's one of the precon ones, go check that one out.
And we're very sorry that we didn't talk about it.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That being said, what are our favorites?
I think my favorite is going to be Herigast, Erupting Nullkite. It's an Eldrazi dragon. It's really cool. I never built a Chiskoria deck, but there is a higher chance that I build this type of deck. Again, I do love Feldon. I've built so many mono red decks in the past, so anytime I'm seeing stuff that's cheating a mana cost and huge creatures and restricted to my favorite color, I'm in.
Pretty sweet. My favorite's Shilgengar.
Shilgengar, everybody.
Shilgengar.
The next time someone asks you what your favorite Pokemon is, just Shilgengar.
Shilgengar.
All day.
Right to their face.
Right to their
Sire of
face.
Famine himself.
Yeah, this is probably my other vote for favorite.
It's so neat. You get to loop-de-doop angels. You get to play a lot of the cool, cheaper angels that you don't often play in angel decks. I'm super into it. So I've started putting a list together already.
All right, I guess I won't build it then. All right, most powerful commander. I think this one's obvious. It's Nadu, the Winged Wisdom.
Yeah.
Behind that, maybe the Dredgeland guy.
Yeah, I think Necrobloom is definitely high up there. I think Imskir has the potential to be really loopy as well.
But Nadu's just
they don't come close.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those commanders, and it's MH3. We should have seen it coming.
I mean, I should have. What I thought I was going to see coming is WotC being like, you know what? We're not going to print an Urza this set. We don't need another Kinnan.
We did, and it's a miscellaneous bird. Who knows who Nadu is? Does it matter? No. To the listeners, which commanders do you think are the most powerful commanders in this set? Did we miss any that you wanted us to talk about? Are you planning on building any of the commanders we talked about today? Are you Shilgengar out there?
Yeah, or are you a Nadu naysayer?
Or a Nadu Yaysayer. Yeah, Nadu enthusiast. You're like, you know what? This card's great. Yeah.
And you're going to build the deck and you're going to play it and everyone's going to be like, don't do that again. And you're like, oh, I get it.
It was fun, though.
It was fun, though, right?
Yeah.
Remember how I did that thing 20 times?
Oh, my God.
Like, yeah, we remember.
My whole deck with a Shuko.
Oh, yeah, we remember.
Neat.
But let us know to listen. If you agree with our assessment, are we too salty about Nadu? Did we Shilgengar hard enough?
Let's find out.
Yeah, let's find out by going to cardkingdom.com/command where you can buy a Shilgengar.
Yeah, and all the angels to go with them.
Yeah, exactly. Or you can buy a Nadu and then not see me ever, hopefully. Don't bring it to a convention and play me. I don't want to see it.
You know they're going to do that now.
I know. I mean, look, I'll be happy to see one Nadu game in the wild and just to go like, yeah.
Nadu, not
you. But it's okay if you do love Nadu because cardkingdom.com/command will not discriminate against you for your commander tastes. They'll let you buy whatever you want from their massive warehouse, and they'll ship it all to you with the exact same customer service and care that they give to each one of their customers. So whether or not you're buying a pile with Jin Cataxius, Nadu, and all of the awful cards that you can play in Commander, or just a bunch of Aftermath analysts, cardkingdom.com/command has your back. So make sure you check them out. You're supporting the show. cardkingdom.com/command. That's the affiliate link. Type it into your browser and you're good to go.
Bookmark it. And while you're bookmarking that, bookmark this. ultrapro.com/command has a huge selection of Magic accessories. All of the sleeves and the deck boxes, the playmats, the binders, everything that you need to keep your collection organized and safe and beautiful.
Card sorting tray with Rachel and I. That's our favorite.
I love that thing.
It's just a piece of plastic, but it's the best piece of plastic I own.
I'm like in my bed with two card sorters. AD's like, what are
you doing? I'm like, quiet, I'm Shilgengar over here.
I'm sorting. They have access to all of the officially licensed Magic art, which for MH3 is a huge amount. They have all of the profile arts are back. They're on sleeves and they're like assembled into a playmat. There's like a big like mosaic style one. It's very pop arty and fun. And you can only get that at ultpro.com. And while you're doing so, you're supporting the show. So that's double whammy. That's like almost as much value as Nadu.
Almost.
Before we go, we got to say thank you to our amazing team for editing this big ol' episode. Thank you to Damon Lentz, Eric Lem, Megan Yip, Gaurav Galati, Jordan Pridgeon, Jamie Block, Arthur Meadowcroft, Manson Lung, Josh Murphy, Jake Boss, Sam Waldo, Evan Limburger, Katie Cole, Mitch Trafford, and
Josh Lee
Kwai.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for watching and listening and sticking with us. We hope you have an amazing time building some of these commanders from MH3. Really build whatever you want.
Happy building.
Do Nadu. We don't
Get
care.
excited.
Just do stuff that makes you happy.
You don't have to make us like it. You're the one playing it.
Exactly. Make your choices, not ours.
Bye.
Thank you for your attention. For further inquiries, send an email to commandcast@rocketjump.com or ask us on Twitter @JFWong and @Josh Lee Kwai. See you later, alligator.
Greetings, humans.
Bye.
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 Gosh, bye.
Get out of here.